Tara Pilling is a renowned mindset consultant, international best-selling co-author, and holistic practitioner whose inspiring journey began at just 21 following a family tragedy. With a diverse array of certifications in holistic modalities, yoga and meditation, and leadership, mentorship from personal development luminaries like Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor, Tara empowers individuals and organizations to unlock their true potential. Residing in beautiful British Columbia with her family, she believes in aligning our minds with universal laws to shape our reality, emphasizing that true change is an inside job. Get ready to be inspired as Tara guides you to transform your mindset and create a life of abundance and fulfillment. And of course, as always, if you check the show notes, you can find more info about Tara. So I am super, super stoked for this conversation. I know I say that in a lot of conversations, but you're someone who I've had the chance to actually work with, both in a personal capacity, but also in an organizational capacity through I still struggle that we called it this. We called our online event The Event. So you were one of the people who helped develop that. You were one of the hosts, as was I, Mike Winter, Josh Del Sol, Devin Vrana. We had such an amazing experience with that. And that's how we met each other and have of course, gotten to know you. And then you're now sitting here in my studio in Texas, and you're from Canada. So this is just an incredible, surreal experience to finally meet you in person and have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just so awesome, Alec. I'm so excited to be here with you. And it's a real honor and a privilege to meet you face to face finally, right? All these years of just getting to know you online.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is so weird when you've talked with someone online so much that for me, I almost have this experience of like, have I met you in person before? Because I've seen you so much. And then it's like, it doesn't feel weird meeting you in person, right? It's like, oh, this is just an old friend that I'm just now meeting in person. It's such a strange phenomenon. So, okay. So what I love about your story, and this may come across wrong, but I know it won't to you because I have also experienced this myself, is that you're someone who had quite a rocky upbringing and went through some tough times. And of course, a lot of people have, and it's all relative and some worse than others. But in Western society, it could be considered what is an exceptional rough time growing up. And to be the woman that you are now, to teach what you teach now, it gives you depth and it gives you that, hey, look what I've come from to now what I'm doing. So I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to get into all the details of your story, but I think as much as you'd like to share from where you came from to how you came to understand the power of co-creation, universal laws, and the power of our mind and who we are as human beings, I think it really gives the context for this conversation. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing some of your story to start.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with alcoholic parents, who did the best they could. With what they had. There was obviously a lot of trauma and mental health and just coping through alcohol. And it was my tipping point at 21. There's obviously there's a lot of dysfunctional things up to 21, but my mom had relapsed, and she had been clean from drinking for a very long time. And she died in her own house fire just after Christmas. So that was obviously like a big tipping point for me. And my mom had left my dad when I was about 5. So I remember just even going through her house fire and my dad being like, what are you going to do with the boys? And it's like, what do you mean, what am I going to do? So I had to get custody of my brothers at that time. And I just went on kind of like a robotic mode, just getting through. But what happened, because of course that's just the way that we cope and we get through things, is I got sick. So I got really sick and I started having problems with my teeth. And if you understand the teeth, they're connected to your organs. And then of course I lost my heart tooth and my lung tooth. That's grief and, the consciousness of love. But, got sick, had some challenges with cancer, and I was just like, I got to do something here. Like something isn't right. But I was also raised in a family where there was a lot of victim consciousness, a lot of lack consciousness. A lot of poverty consciousness. We were very, very poor. Me and my mom raised us on social services. And so there was a lot of, really negative programming there. And when I got sick, I don't know, I was just like, if I don't do something, I'm not going to do so good here. And I think the added responsibility of my brothers, my sister kind of went MIA for a while, and both my younger brothers ended up moving out to BC with me. And I had some pretty emotionally impacting moments. Like, I mean, it's fair to say I was probably pretty suicidal most of the time, but just pushing through, right? Just forcing myself to just get up and keep moving forward. So, when I got sick, and I remember this moment of just pulling my Jeep over. And I remember, and I believe that on some level, we're all, maybe even praying. My mom was atheist. So, I always had this connection to a creator, a God, and I didn't know quite what that was. But I heard this voice. I pulled my Jeep over, and I remember being like, I'm killing myself. Like, I'm making myself sick. Like, I've got to do something. And I'd say from there on out, I just went like hardcore into holistic, energy-based medicine, vibrational medicine, just every, it's where I got into yoga and meditation. And just over time, I realized that a lot of the, things that I was learning about, and then became a practitioner in all of those. I mean, I taught yoga and meditation for 18 years as a senior teacher. I realized a lot of it was around leadership and self-development and human potential. And that's kind of what led me into, going into mentorships, which was a big deal. I had to have enough confidence to do that, was to, work with Robin Sharma for a year in leadership. And then I moved into studying with Tony Robbins for a few years. And then, of course, it was Bob. And I've been with Bob since 2017. So, I mean, I always think when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Right. And I was sharing this with you beforehand. I've got a lot of training in religion. I mean, I've studied Vedic philosophy. I've studied Buddhism. During the pandemic, I spent 2 years studying Catholicism because of my kids, because they're at Waldorf, and we were looking at what to do after homeschooling in Waldorf. And that was to move into a private school that was Catholic. So it was my son who wanted to be baptized, because I didn't baptize my kids. I wanted them to make their own decisions. Mm-hmm. So it was my son who kind of like inspired us to do that. But I do believe, like looking back, everything I've been through, I do believe that God, and I'm just totally open to like angels and everything, were like totally divinely guiding me, and that it's an absolute like miracle that I'm here. But there was just something inside of me that was like, listen up. Or it was just someone I would meet, something they would say. Because, and Bob would always say this, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And there was that part of me that's like, there's something I'm missing here. Like my results, like I knew like I needed to get a little bit of what you have. What is that? Like, what am I missing here? And so, I mean, I've just been hooked on learning and self-development. And I'm still that way. I'm just, now the difference is it's not a value thing. I think part of it before too was like, when I get enough understanding and education, I'm going to be important. People will value me. People will love me. Because that's even what a small child does with their parents, is like, love me. Now it's like, I just love learning. We're either stuck in ignorance or we're learning and we're getting educated. And there's no better time to get educated, to get the understanding around, your mind and laws and how things work. I mean, I trained in the laws of mankind. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't understand the difference between the legal system and law. So it's been, I don't know, it's been so exciting, and I'm still on that path, and there's so much work to do. And at the same time, I'm just like absolutely thrilled that I'm here still. So it's like, this is great. I woke up today, another day of just living and learning and serving. So
amazing. Yeah. Amazing. So I think as an opening question, being someone who does what you do now, so well put together, so articulate, like helping so many people across the earth understand the power of the mind and the power of who they are and their connection with the divine, the creator, God, whatever you want to call it, their ability to co-create this reality. Having gone through as much trauma as you did, what are some of the ways that you learned to, rather than cope with that trauma, but actually like heal the trauma through your various mentors and things that you've learned over time? What are some of the primary ways?
I'd say like initially it was because I'm trained in, kinesiology, specialized kinesiology, body talk, emotional stress release, emotional freedom technique. I mean, you kind of name it. And I dove deep into it, and I started just to see the evidence that it was working. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, because initially I wanted to become a psychologist, and thank God I decided not to become that, because we go into the work we need. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it was just such a wonderful way because you got to get the problem out of you. Yeah. And it And I remember like one of my first teachers just doing a session on me and all this like energy of stuff to do with my mom and feeling guilty. Like I was actually the last one to talk to her before she died. And, you know, she had always, in a sense, programmed us when our dad called, because he was always drunk, like, you know, call me tomorrow when you're sober. Well, I was the last person to talk to her. And it was actually New Year's, and I talked to her and I was really upset. And so I said, call me tomorrow. Well, that tomorrow was me showing up, like, you know, we were at the ski hill celebrating New Year's, was being at my home and the RCMP officers being like, swear your mom just died in a fire. Right. So, you know, having that session and not realizing that I took all that on as like my, like it was my fault. Right. And we don't realize sometimes, like, we're so unaware of how we, I guess, digest or don't digest things that are going on in our life. So it just gave me an outlet. And once, you know, I started to see that evidence. Like, so for instance, even with the cancer, which affected all my woman parts, like, hello, like, I mean, that's a consciousness of your connection to your mother.
Right.
So once I started to do this and change things too, like, of course, I wasn't physically taking care of myself. I wasn't eating properly, you know, but once I started to wake up and do some of this work, I just wanted to learn about it because I was like, this is amazing, like meridians, and I can do this emotional stress release, and I don't need to pay thousands of dollars because I was working at the hospital at the time in physical therapy. That's my initial training. And I remember even talking to some of the counselors there, and I'm like, why is she talking about a bird? Or like, because I was so in shock still. And I really didn't buy into it, actually. And so it was just such a powerful way to have these like enormous emotional releases.
Would you say that they were like subconsciously, for lack of a better term, stuck in you, and you didn't even realize that they were there? So this brings up an interesting point then too, since you're agreeing with that. So this is a very generalized statement, and I just want to see if you agree with this. Overwhelmingly, this realm is a realm of mind, meaning that like our mind, individuated mind, and the one mind are dictating the outcomes in this reality in the way that it is created. With that being said, whether this is a purposeful forgetting or like, you know, if you've gone down the route of like the reincarnation trap, Gnostics, like someone conditioned this realm to have us forget, irrespective, we have this aspect of, to certain degrees, forgetting who and what we are and the power to co-create. So we're either unwittingly or wittingly creating in this realm. We're always doing it, but some of us just aren't aware. And with that being said, when you start to understand the power of the individuated mind to co-create your experience, for someone who is very attuned and very powerful, who has done a lot of work, or maybe they were just born that way, they can release this subconscious trauma just by reprogramming their conscious mind. Now, it takes a very, very attuned, dedicated, special individual, in my opinion, to be able to do that. Although we all have the capacity to do it. And that's where someone like, for example, Joe Dispenza would say you don't need to revisit or go back and deal with your trauma. You just need to create new neural pathways. And yes, that does work for many people. And that is a capacity that we all have. Again, for many of us, though, I would say for the overwhelming majority of us, because we are still working through our own conditioning, of which we have varying degrees of based on our unique life experiences, what was impressed upon us as kids, what was impressed upon us when we were in the womb, maybe some past life things, maybe some generational things that were imprinted into the waters of our being. I hesitate to call it DNA because I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but you get what I'm saying. Like imprinted into us. And we were talking before, these limited studies, and I don't remember exactly how they were done, but essentially they would expose these rats or ferrets to a certain stimulus that was causing them pain. And then multiple generations of that same lineage came, and based on the same stimulus, those rats expressed the same fear that like 4 generations back, so their great grandma or great great grandma or great grandpa were also expressing, meaning that just that is stored in the tissue to some degree. So with all that being said, what I'm getting at is, for some of us, I do think that it requires, because we have not really developed the capacity to understand how powerful our co-creative conscious mind is, the subconscious, which I've come to understand is the body, sometimes needs some extra tools to help it release what it is holding on to, oftentimes unbeknownst to our conscious mind. So, Yeah, I said a lot there. I just wanted to throw that at you and see what you think about it.
I completely agree with you. I mean, this is where, there's many practices. Like, I mean, for some people, it might be just going for a massage, to release energy. But yeah, like I completely agree. But I think that there's like an innate wisdom within us that is, trying to guide us and that knows. And I think like that's that part of us that just knows that like, yeah, I'm drawn to this. There's something here for me. And it's just like, I think how, when we get to the core of who we are, we just know that there's certain things that don't feel right and they don't work for us. I think that, we have to listen more. And I mean, I've missed the mark lots, but I think what's really supported me has been listening to those nudges. And I do believe it, at the end of the day, there is only one God, but we get disconnected. I mean, that's what disease and separation. And then look at, all these paradigms that have to shift, like look at outside of us. All those things are to control us. And this is where, again, we're getting disconnected from the very like innate part of ourselves.
Right.
And I think this is where we got to get back to some of these more like practices like getting on the earth and, barefoot walking and, getting solar energy in our eyes, stepping away from distractions, things like that, because it's like because there is so much distraction, because everything is so busy, it's like, again, it's just creating more separation, more disease. And I think that there's no better time again than now, because we have this opportunity to remember who we are.
Yes.
But at the same time, how do we remember who we are? We have to forget who we are to remember who we are. I reflect on like the Wizard of Oz. You have the Tin Man and you have the lion, and they're looking for their heart and to be brave. And yet the whole time it was there. But it's like we have to forget. And it's like almost like all of this, I believe, is a remembering process. So it's remembering that, we're not the victim. We're not, we're actually the victor. This is who we are, and we're meant to lead. Mm-hmm. But it does take, like, is it easy? No, it's not easy. I mean, I'm doing the good work every day and I fail all the time, but this is the opportunity, is to just continue moving forward. And it does take a lot of courage, because, I mean, well, look at society. It's easy to just play the victim. I mean, I think it's harder to play the victim because I live most of my life there personally.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
But it's the programming. It's the programming that keeps us, in this trap. But how do you know you're in a trap unless you start to study it, unless you start to get that understanding and education? Because that's ignorance. We're just stuck in ignorance. Yeah. And so when you have, truth seekers and truth speakers like yourself, Alec, it really activates a lot of people, because their paradigms start to crumble. And so then there's all this resistance. And again, I always think, like, if it's activating you, and I always tell people, I'm like, I'm an activator. If I'm not activating you, well, I'm doing something wrong, because it's the activation that is like, that's the gold. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, good. There's like a limiting belief. Let's get to the core of the problem. Let's get to the root of where this came from. And that is the great thing with the activation. It's like, okay. And, I've been watching some of the podcasts that you've been doing. It's like, I think just when we think we know, we probably don't know. It's like, so, I hopefully that is kind of like making sense.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That's just kind of where I come from.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you brought up, it's easier at first, but then it becomes very draining to stay in victimhood. And how did you reconcile having been victimized at certain points in your life? Because there were times where you were victimized in an instance, right? But not hang on to that perpetual victim mentality. Like, what was it that you came across? Who did you learn from? Or was it something inside of you that helped you step out of that victim mentality?
Yeah, I would have said that, many mentors, and like, I'm just thinking of like Tony Robbins, and, it's like, I right away, I have this vision of Bob being on stage, and I had just finished studying all these years with Tony, and it was really like I had to shift my whole mindset to work with Bob, because it was completely different. Yeah.
What would you say are the different? Pause there for a second. What would you say are the differences between Tony and Bob?
Well, Tony, like, he just puts that fire under your ass and gets you moving, right? And where Bob helps you understand, the programming and the paradigm. And I remember,
and even the laws to some degree too.
Oh
right?
yeah, and law. I mean, we go deep into law. We go deep into Neville Goddard and Thomas.
And we'll touch on that in a little
Initially, with students, we don't go because that's a paradigm shift in itself, especially if there's a lot of religious dogma, right? But I remember this one instance. I mean, this Bob standing on stage, and it just hit me in my heart. And you know something is right when it just smacks you. And I remember Bob saying, "Someone might be responsible for programming you, but you are responsible now for programming yourself for what it is you desire and taking the lead." And I remember just, I don't know, it just smacked me. It was like that, probably all that victim consciousness and everything's being done to me. And I'm, the girl that was, the abuse, the alcoholism, the trauma, the loss of mom, everything. And it was just like, yeah, like, what if all of that was perfect? And again, you talk about karma. We have no idea. What if all of that was like, I'm a highly enlightened, actually spiritual being, and I chose this life, and I've come back here to learn. How would I learn? I would only learn when I go through these like horrendous, horrible experiences, right? So, I just love that. It's like, yeah, someone might be, and I think to an extent, we're all programmed genetically, environmentally. I mean, we're seeing it in a big way, but it's our responsibility. Your results are just a reflection of what's going on within. So if you don't like your results, and I don't care if that's in your finances, your relationships, your health, well, it's just a reflection. It's a reflection of that programming, and it's up to you to change it, right? I mean, everybody's looking for a leader. And we just had the election here, right? And all that. And it's just so funny because everyone's outsourcing. And it's like, but the leader you're looking for is inside of you. Like, this is where the leader is. So, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
It's that inside job thing again. And I think that was like, it was just part of my programming. I mean, I've seen that even within my generations, which is, again, all the coping and the victim consciousness, but it was like, oh, I see what that looks like. I mean, ultimately for me, losing both my parents and losing most people I love, I was like, well, that path is death. So maybe I should do something different here.
So the first question I want to ask is, when you look back on those traumatic experiences, have you come to look at them through, doing the conscious and subconscious work, the body work, the reorienting your mind, redoing your programming, if you will? Do you look back on those experiences with gratitude?
Oh, 100%. I always say they're my biggest blessings now. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And I ask that because that's kind of what I've come to as well, is I look back on those experiences that I had growing up, pretty traumatic upbringing as well. And I'm like, I am legitimately fully grateful for that. Now, I will say for me, the way I'm constituted with my programming at the time, it took a lot of time for me to sort through the anger, the guilt, the shame, the rage, like all of those, quote, lower vibrational, what people say, emotions that I think are useful for some time in order for you to process. And you need to feel those things, or most of us, again, if we're not that individual who has such a strong co-creative faculty to just reprogram the waters of our body, we need to feel those things in order to release them. And that's like somatically releasing them and also reorienting our mind and the story we tell ourselves around them. And it took some time to get to that. But on the back end of it, I look back at those experiences and I am legitimately grateful for having experienced them. Just like you said, coming into this life, whether it was, I did some messed up stuff in my past lives that I had karma to work off, so that's why I had to deal with these, or I deliberately chose like, no, I'm going to go experience some pretty tough stuff here, but it's going to be for my own soul development. I can honestly say that I'm so grateful for all those things that I experienced. And then what that does for me is it reorients my mind, and I'm like, yeah, I was victimized, but like, look at the lessons that it taught me. Look how this trauma was used as a catalyst to propel me to who I am right now and be able to show people how to transmute so much muck into something that's absolutely beautiful and then share that gift with the world as you're doing right now too.
Yeah. Like, I always say everything's a lesson or a blessing. And it's everything. I mean, again, we're still, and I think we're just walking each other home. We're still I mean, every day you wake up, there's like, it's not like you just come to this place, you know, that there's that quote, like happiness is not, you know, a destination, it's a journey. It's just like this path we're on. So there's always going to be different layers, right, that are going to come up. And we don't want to, you know, you mentioned the feeling, like you got to, there's that saying, you got to feel it to heal it. I mean, yes, if you're super enlightened, maybe you don't need to, but I mean, I'm a very heart feely kind of person. And I do believe those emotions get trapped in our body, and we've got to, again, we don't want to spiritually bypass even the lower vibrations. I mean, shame and guilt are like at like 30 and 40, you know, HZ hertz or whatever. Love,
this is David Hawkins.
Yeah, David Hawkins, you know, is at like 400 or 500. I mean, that's ultimately where, you know, the life that you desire, your goals are like up there. But we don't want to spiritually bypass all this, because everything is a cry for love or an extension of love. So, you know, and I think there is some of that happening now, right? It's like, oh, I'm down here. So, you know, it's like, hey, recognize, but this is an opportunity. It's a blessing, or, you know, it's a lesson.
Right.
And so I, you know, I have all sorts of different layers of things that will come up, but just recognizing I don't want to stay stuck here too much, because that's the way the laws work. Like, people misunderstand the law of attraction. I mean, the law of attraction is not just instant. It's when we're stuck there for a very long time. And when you understand the science behind it, that's a whole, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's woo-woo. No, there's a whole science behind this. I mean, if the law of attraction was instant, I mean, we have kids. So, you know, you have a negative thought, oh, my kid's going to cross the street and get hit by a car. Well, wham, your kid would get hit by a car. It doesn't work that way. It's when we stay stuck and we don't do something. And so when we have the awareness, like I always say, there's no causes other than your own state of consciousness. It's like my favorite saying right now, or another way of saying that is, there's no causes other than your own state of awareness. When you become aware, right? And that's why I just fell in love with New German medicine as well, because it's so aligned with what I teach and thinking into results. It's like, once you become aware, do something. Like, and that's where it's on you to take the lead and move forward, right? So we're either stuck in ignorance, or we're getting understanding. We're getting, you know, we're getting educated. And that's faith. The side of ignorance is fear. We just stay stuck there. I mean, that's like a boat without a rudder. I mean, we've got canoes like and kayaks. And if you don't have that rudder in, I mean, you're just going to go in circles, right? And this is, I always say, an indicator of that is like blame and projection. It's where you're seeing something outside of yourself and not recognizing, oh, this is like a mirror of something actually that's going on within me. And that's more empowering, right? So. Yeah.
I love what you said there about our individuated consciousness being the cause, right? Like the cause for our reality. Walter Russell, this is a paraphrase quote, but he essentially says that trying to figure out cause and effect in the material world is futile, because the one true cause of everything is God. And then the extension of God that we experience is our co-creative capacity through our individuated, I don't like saying individual, individuated because it's an aspect of God, consciousness. So that is the one true cause of everything. And that's actually a perfect segue into my last question related to your past. I'll preface this by saying you see this a lot. For example, we were talking about David Goggins before.
Yeah.
I think that in order for people to really understand that they are in the driver's seat, that no one is coming to save them, that it is ultimately on them to bring about the change that they want to see, it requires that people sometimes hit rock bottom. Do you feel that, you know, this experience of losing your mom and things like this were sort of rock bottom for you, where you had nowhere else to turn except for like, okay, it's on me now to figure this out. So you had that sort of impetus to look within and have to figure out these processes by experience?
Oh, 100%. And I think even at that time, like looking back, and of course there was patterns of coping. I mean, I grew up with it, so it was natural. But there was also that part of me that was like, yeah, but this doesn't work. This coping is not going to work out long term. So I had nowhere to go but within. And, you know, I mean, I'm still doing it. I'm still going within. There's still layers of stuff that comes up. The only difference is that my awareness has grown so much. And when you become aware, so I was just saying this to a friend who's here, who was like, man, in the United States, there's so many fast food restaurants. Well, and I said to him, well, last time I had fast food, I was living in the Caymans and I flew into New York. I was vegetarian at the time and I had a cheeseburger with no burger and just fries in the middle. I said, that's the last time. And I was thinking, why was that the last time I had fast food? Because that would have been way back in like 2001. Like, I just don't eat fast food, right? It's because once you become aware that this shit just is making us sick and poisoning us, it's really hard to go back to that older version of you that would just go out and drink a whole bunch, be hungover, and then go eat a greasy burger, right? So it's that awareness piece. And so when you become aware, you got to do something. Because again, this is the responsibility. This is the accountability piece. We got to take extreme ownership for our lives. Mm-hmm. And that's like real freedom. Mm-hmm. Right? And you don't need to be perfect. I would say like we're imperfectly perfect. I mean, who we really are, the joke's on us. Like we are perfect, whole, and complete. But we forgot. Mm-hmm. So opportunity again.
Opportunity.
Right? Just to keep remembering who we are, who we really are, which is, I mean, I really believe that we're spirit. Mm-hmm. We're just, this is our house. But this isn't who I really am. One day, our bodies are going to die, but energy always just is moving from one form to the next. Like energy never dies. Mm-hmm. There's this spiritual, there's spirit within me. And I went down the path, into spirit and death, the Tibetan Book of Living Dying and a lot of Elizabeth Kubler's work.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead's on the shelf right behind me.
Is it awesome? Because like when, obviously losing my mom and seeing her, because when you see somebody burned, it's quite a traumatic experience. Mm-hmm. So in physio, I had asked all the nurses if I could spend time with some of my clients that were going to die. Because I think that was like the hardest part for me was like thinking that was like, it was like, finite, like it was done. It was like there was nothing else. Right. And I think that's where we lose hope. Mm. Right. And so I had just a really profound experience with a client of mine. And I just remember praying to God and being like, if there is more, I need to know that there's more. Remember, my mom was atheist. There was a lot of programming, like, because we would go to church just to be fed, because we lived in low income homes and there was a church across the way. And so I really blamed God and I questioned God around a lot of this. And so I sat with this little old man who used to read me Nostradamus all the time, which is kind of crazy because a lot of that's kind of happened. And the nurses let me sit with him as he was dying. And I just prayed. Like I just said, God, if you're real, if there's more than this, I need to know. And it's crazy, even I'm sharing this on your podcast, but I just saw this light. He just took his last breath and I saw this light just hit the roof and go whoosh. And I remember going, okay, have I completely lost it? Whoa. But I knew that was like, and again, we have to ask for what it is we desire. I believe that on some level, I've always been praying. And I believe that God, again, whatever you call it, Allah, Krishna, I don't care what people call it, universal consciousness, I just call it God. But I believe that God has always been there, guiding and supporting me. Right. I just also had to ask, because that's also the law of non-interference. I can't expect you to help me, Alec. And let's say I'm having some challenges and I'm like, why isn't Alec helping me? Why isn't he calling me? And he should know. Some people do this. Well, we've also got to have those conversations with, again, whatever you call that energy, but I just say, God, I mean, I talk to my angels every day. Mm-hmm. I talk to God every day. It's working for me. Who knows? Because we don't know for sure anything. But it's, I mean, who we really are is spiritual beings. And we're here to have this as a human experience. I think sometimes we just take it all way too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. So that's actually what I wanted to cover next anyway, is the universal laws, because I look at that as setting the foundation of this canvas, which I would say is this reality that we're existing in. The canvas is the universal laws that God, the creator, the one mind, whatever you want to call that, set in place that we then get to paint on. So there is sort of this canvas as I see it, and those are what you would call the universal laws. So can you share some of the primary universal laws that we're co-creating with, that we're having to work with in this realm?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, well, Bob would always say this, that the law is God's modus operandum. Another word for law is Lord or love. Okay, so I mean, even Bob, that's how he became quite famous, was through The Secret. But he always laughed because he said The Secret didn't give away the secret, right? Everyone was like, law of attraction, law of attraction. I mean, primary law is a law of vibration. Everything vibrates. Nothing rests. I mean, your body is a massive vibration. I mean, they've even, if you can take Kirlian photography. It's pretty amazing, actually. And they've been able to even see the soul leaving the body now, like amazing. Or when they're doing Reiki on someone, and or you have a mother who embraces her child, or they've done that with like animals, right? And how the vibration of the body shifts. So, the primary law is the law of vibration. Everything moves, nothing rests. And it's our vibration. I always say, like, when in thinking in terms of like, those universal laws, think in terms of like vibration and attraction. And be aware of what you're attracting, because what you're attracting is going to show you the vibration. If you're someone who wakes up and you're just always in a shitty mood and you're always focused on drama and chaos and confusion, which, by the way, you should walk the opposite way, you will naturally draw into your environment the very same energy. And what does that do? Well, it might be reinforcing a paradigm that you're a victim, right? So it is an inside job. The law of laws is a law of cause and effect. So, this is where we want to be in service. There's no better time to be in service. There's no better time to co-create. There's no better time to really lead and to just be a good human. Because again, whatever you put out, it's going to come back. The problem is, this is where people play this like tit for tat. Oh, I'm going to be really kind and do this for you, but I'm going to expect you're going to do this back for me. Oftentimes when you put out a lot of good, it comes back from a source you could have never imagined. And so again, it's just that we're ignorant to the law. And I always say, like, there's thousands of laws. The laws don't work my way and they don't work your way. They work their own way. And a great example of this is like the law of gravity. You might try to convince me you're going to go to the roof of this building and you're going to jump off and you're going to fly. And I'd say, Alec, you don't understand the law of gravity. You're going to break your arms and legs. You might die, right? But this is what people are doing. They just, again, they're stuck in ignorance. They don't understand the laws don't work their way. And if you want to get better results in your life, you got to harmonize with those laws. You got to understand those laws. And we're seeing that there's a lot of people that just don't understand the law. And so then again, what's it doing? Well, again, it comes down to the deeper beliefs, and it's all around, like, again, the conditioning, the programming. And if, let's say, there's a deeper belief, like in my work, we always say, well, the one belief that always leads to failure is I'm not good enough. Okay. Well, if I have a belief that I'm not good enough, I need people and situations to keep proving to me that that's true. That's also proving I'm a victim. Well, great. Paradigm keeps taking you sideways. I mean, it's just a lie. I would say take belief system, shorten it, BS.
Yeah.
The truth is you are good enough. You are love. I mean, you're God, one of God's highest form of creation. So again, we've got to understand and we've got to harmonize. And when we harmonize law and understand our mind, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have tough times. But again, that's leadership. Like when you look at leaders, like you look at people that are creating all sorts of success, they have, and I wish for even those people like really tough times and challenges, because they're going after something bigger, right? And so of course there's going to be challenges and obstacles, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow. And so they just understand their mind better. They again, their awareness, their consciousness is shifted, and they're harmonizing because they understand, well, you break this law, this is what's going to happen. That's why even throughout all of this, even throughout the event, right, there was always something inside of me because of all this training that the laws work towards betterment. Remember, it's Lord and love. So if the laws work to betterment and you have like this small group of people dictating the planet, well, I would hate to be that person.
Right.
The laws work their own way. It's not going to work out for them.
Right.
So
the law of karma is one of those that they're going to have to deal with at some point too.
Exactly. So again, this is where we have to strengthen our faith. But we have to remember who we are, because we've forgotten who we are, and then we give our power to something else, and then that keeps reinforcing that we're victims and we're not good enough. We just don't know who we are. Right? So
the other law, and maybe this is the same as the law of vibration, everything's in movement, everything is vibrating at some level, is the law of resonance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think a lot of people will sort of mix up and say this is all one thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I kind of take them to mean the same thing. Law of resonance, the law of attraction, and like the art of, or the ability to co-create. That's all sort of the same thing, right? Because it's whether you're matching to the thing internally, right? And how you are vibrating to what you would like to bring into being, essentially, in this reality. So do you see the law of resonance as the same with the law of attraction? It's sort of the same thing?
I do. And a great example of that is just how we got to know each other through the event, right? I mean, I just, in a sense, I was praying. I mean, I also, I didn't vaccinate my kids. We completely had been doing something different than what society had told us to do for a long time. Mm-hmm. So there was something inside of me that was like, yeah, I've got to just learn and grow. And it's no coincidence just how everything came together and how we came together, because I was praying to God for support and how to move forward and support people in moving towards faith versus fear, because the fastest way to control the masses is through fear. And that's where you're stuck in ignorance. So there was no coincidence that we all, we were magnetized to each other. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, and what was it within 3 days? Like 130,000 people were moving in this direction of mindset and these 6 pillars that we created, because we were in resonance. We were in harmony, right? And so I just think it's pretty amazing. So that's one thing I've learned to do, is just to pay attention. What do I need to say no to that's not in resonance? What might be part of like old patterning, and it's a gift because it's an opportunity to learn and to grow and to heal, and what is in resonance with my bigger goal and where I want to go. And for me, I knew when all of this rolled out, I was like that's mama energy. Like, there is no way I'm doing this, or like I'm doing this with my kids, because I think at that point I already had enough understanding and education around the body. I mean, I had studied energy and vibrational medicine. I was part of VRAN, which is a vaccine risk awareness network in Canada. I just did different things with my kids instead of it's funny because my kids are going to go see they never seen a medical doctor. I had them at home, right? And there was a lot of judgment around some of the things that I had done, but it just felt aligned because I got educated. Like I was telling you, I traveled around with the Prophets Conference. I was with Hopi prophets and Mayan grandmothers. Like it was just, again, I do believe that's why we attract certain things. But this is where people got to pay attention. We're either in growth mindset and moving forward and moving towards those goals and the betterment, which the law always works betterment. That's, again, where I have, I don't know, it just feels good. I feel confident because it's like, yeah, but the laws work towards betterment. So regardless of what a small group of people do, the laws work their own way. Or we're going backwards. And this is where we are. We're stuck in old paradigms, old ways of doing things. We're stuck in old hurts. We're just literally stuck in the past. So again, we've just got to become aware. And again, are you moving forward? Are you growing? Are you going back? And are you stuck like a boat without a rudder? So, I mean, and this is where each and every person just has to take an honest look at their results, because your results never lie. And your results are just a reflection of the subconscious anyways.
Right.
So again, opportunity.
Yep. Absolutely. So speaking of the law of attraction, especially with Bob saying like the law of attraction and the movie The Secret never actually revealed the secret. I guess the way I'd like to form this question is, what are the things that Bob has taught you, and or the things you have come to understand about how people have come to misinterpret what the law of attraction is, or what they get wrong about the law of attraction or the law of co-creation or resonance?
Yeah, I think that it's just an old pattern of thinking, again, it's that victim consciousness. Maybe I've attracted this, there's something wrong with me. And I think that's where we get stuck in those lower vibrations and not seeing the opportunity. What Bob taught me, and this was like even the power of gratitude. I mean, even as a yogi, right? Oh, gratitude. but I did not understand gratitude to the level that I understand it. I mean, Bob would go in even to, big corporations that were, let's say, not meeting the financial dollar that they want to make. And he'd get them all started on a gratitude practice. And they'd be like, what? Because it seems so insignificant.
What did that look like, though? Because I can see where, and I know I want to get into this as part of the law of attraction where people get it wrong too. It can become sort of this like mental masturbation almost, for lack of a better term, where you're just thinking about gratitude, but you're not actually feeling gratitude.
Yeah, and it has to be a felt gratitude, because the heart is, the ancients even believed that our heart was our subconscious connection to God, right? And I think for most people, Alec, though, gratitude does start off mechanical.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Though, right?
That's okay. It's just like, yoga. Most people, they're just going through the movement. And then that's where after practice, Patanjali said that practice, and all is coming. So like, that's where you get to that place of like, for me, yoga's being out in the forest. It's not about doing a handstand now. I mean, I just had to mechanically go through, fake
it till you make it type of thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? You asked me. I would say that just looks like initially just like a daily non-negotiable. Again, we're in theta brainwave, and our subconscious is most, it's going to be most accessed first thing in the morning and later on in the day. First thing in the morning, like, win your morning, win your day. This is a great time as you wake up to, I always say my superpower is pray, blessings, gratitudes, meditation, like, especially because we live in a world that there's so many distractions. Like, set yourself up during that theta brainwave to get into that zone of, and this is being an intentional creator and an intentional co-creator. So what I even do with my students initially, and it's a daily practice, like, let's write out 10 things that I'm grateful for. And one of the things I suggest, because we live in 3D, is like, let's get you into 4D. So I want you to take half those gratitudes. And let's even with your podcast, let's see, 1 million viewers or something, right? Well, then you'd be like, I'm so happy and grateful now that, this podcast reached 1 million viewers. Like, and so you're living in that wish fulfilled, as Neville Goddard talks about. When you understand gratitude from the science and from the way that the laws work, it's a total game changer. So when you think about, you wake up and you're thinking about your day and gratitude, like it's an Ayurvedic practice I do. I wake up, I touch the floor, touch my heart, and I'm like, I'm alive, right? Like, I'm so happy. Like, I woke up because I was in corpse pose all night and I just woke up. Do you know how many people don't wake up? Right. It's crazy. Like, you just woke up, you have another day of living. But again, it's practice, because initially it might be mechanical. But when you understand that when you start focusing on gratitude, it moves the cells in your body to a positive pole. You can only attract things at that pole, so you will attract more positive. It's and this is what actually where even The Secret came from, was The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. He has a whole chapter on gratitude, by the way, and he would say that the more grateful you are, the more you draw yourself to source supply, and the more things you will be grateful for. So just think of that. Like, most people, unfortunately, wake up and they're already dreading their day. They got to go to a job they hate. Maybe they're focused on their bills. So what are they doing in that situation? Is they're moving the cells of their body to a negative pole. You can only attract everything at that pole. This is the science, and so once you and I am a scientist. So I love the science. I'm like you. I love to research everything. So it's not woo-woo, but that's the challenge when people watch things like The Secret and that. They think, oh, it's woo-woo. Even energy work. It's really that intention. And it's whatever you focus on, by law, it has to grow. So it's just becoming more aware. Don't beat up on yourself when you're attracting maybe things that are of a lower vibe and you don't want. Just see that as a gift and go. And this is where, I always say, like, our thoughts are things and our words give them wings. So we've just got to go, okay, well, what am I focused on? What am I thinking about most of the time? Oh, I'm thinking about debt most of the time. I'm thinking about my trauma most of the time. Well, that's why you're attracting certain things into your life. And so it's a mindset shift. And again, I can't express, especially someone who would have went into training with Bob and been like, oh, I know gratitude. I do gratitude all the time. I did not understand gratitude. not to this level. And so I now pretty much live my life just with everything I'm doing. I was telling you I had to pull over to a gas station. Well, they don't have the water I want to buy. Well, I'm so grateful I can buy water. I bless my water. So grateful I could put gas in my car. It's just the way I have learned to program my mind, because my programming, the way I grew up, was the opposite. It was like, when things were really good, I still have this memory of my mom. Like when things would be good, my mom would be like, oh, something bad's got to happen.
Oh boy.
That was the programming I had. So I have to be mindful of that. So one thing I did initially, even when I was studying with Bob, because I realized, especially through the science of getting rich, and that's such a great chapter, by the way, was that I needed to program myself to think. And I don't like that whole positive thinking thing, but I got to move my thoughts to the positive pole, because I am tired of being basically a shit magnet. It's like, and so I would just put a timer in my phone on the hour, stop, breathe, like a meditation snack, focus on what I'm grateful for, and send a blessing to someone. Like, so I just put that in my phone. I still have some of those timers. And it's interesting because I'll be out with people and the alarm will go off. This just happened at the gym the other day, and the girl beside me, her alarm went off. And right away, it's like that Sigmund Freud thing, right? It's like, oh, gratitude. So I've programmed myself, and every time that bell goes off or I hear it, stop, take a breath. What am I grateful for?
Wow.
It's amazing.
So at first it starts as this sort of mental, almost forced exercise that can feel like you're just, only sticking in your mind, right? But not bringing it into feeling. And what I like to call the difference between the two is just generalized awareness versus focused awareness. I think focused awareness is when it's thought and feeling combined, right? And so would you disagree with that, by the way?
No, 100%. And this is where I've studied a lot of heart coherence and heart math. So one thing, especially because I think too, some people are so disconnected from their emotions. And I mean, our emotions are very important. And actually the feeling is your subconscious. So I just tell people, like, if you're having a difficult time, I actually had one gentleman who came to work with me and he just wanted to be able to feel. He was it was his programming, like completely shut off. It actually caused so many problems in his relationships. So that was his C-type goal, which we say is like a big dream. He just wanted to be able to really feel things. It can be as simple as like just practicing, like bringing your hands to your heart. Focusing on something. It could be like the birth of a child, a really great moment, like you're an athlete like me, where it just felt so good. It's just, again, it is that you got to practice, especially if there is programming that disconnects you. And that's usually rooted in some sort of like old trauma. So
what I love about the writing practice, like writing out what you are grateful for, is that for me, that feels like pulling myself out of mind into body. So I'm bringing my mind and body into coherence as I am sort of trying to program myself with these things. I think there's like really power in both spoken word and written word, because it's expressing that thing in reality rather than just keeping it in your mind. So I don't know, have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, we have a
like
formula.
That?
So, writing causes us to think. You start writing. I mean, this is even if there's a bunch of negative crap, dump it out. Get the problem out of you. That's like, if you keep that crap in you, that's where you wake up one day and the doctor says you got cancer or something. You got to get that crap out. But writing causes you to think. I love Julia Cameron's exercise. It's like a meditative where you spend like a whole hour in the morning and you just write. But you're not writing to get anywhere. You just dump out all these like random thoughts. So that's a really great meditative practice. But writing causes you to think. Thinking, that's a transmutation of energy, right? Perpetual transmutation, which means your thoughts are things. Your thoughts turn into form. Thinking causes feeling. Feeling is the language of the subconscious mind. It's another word for frequency or the law of vibration. Feeling causes action. And action causes reaction. By the way, there's the law of attraction right there. So that's the formula, right? Writing, right? So you write, think, feel, act, your results. The problem here is that we have been programmed to live from our results. Remember, that's way over here. So what do? We're focused on the results. You cannot get better results by focusing on the excess weight you're carrying or your health problems or your crappy relationship. You got to go back to where the result was created. Way over here, right? we got to come back to the thinking.
Yeah.
And again, this is how we can become aware of our thinking by writing, getting it on
Would
paper.
you say preceding thinking would be like foundational conditioned beliefs too?
100%. It always comes down to the root of the belief systems. And that's, I remember when Bob said that, he said the root of all failure is I am not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at anybody, because obviously I work in consulting and mentorship with Bob, it's like, and of course, the work is not for me to go out there and fix anyone. I really love Mahatma Gandhi. He was a great leader in this. Be the change that you wish to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's on me to do that internal work. And I will magnetize all the people. That's how even you and I became magnetized,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's my job. That's sovereignty. That's 100% responsibility. Mm-hmm. I'm a sovereign being. I'm doing my work. That's what inspires others, right? And so, when we understand some of these foundational practices and we start doing it, this is where we can really serve. But it's not about me fixing anybody else outside of me. And I think that was part of my programming. Well, I know it was, especially in my little life, because I grew up with alcoholic parents. Mm-hmm. What did the young child in me want to do? I felt responsible for everybody. I wanted to fix everybody. When I couldn't fix the people in my life, it reinforced that I was not good enough. I was not lovable. All this BS. So most people that are not getting the results that they want, that's all that little life. It was, and it's not, this quote comes from even before Dr. Bruce Lipton, but I've done a lot of training with him. And he says, give me a boy up to the age of 7 and I'll show you the man. Right?
Right.
Right. Like, it really makes you think.
Right. Such a significant impact, like imprinting upon them up until that age. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
In nearly all cases with modern health systems, you're waiting months for appointments only to spend a mere 10 minutes with a doctor who quickly hands out a generic diagnosis that is likely rooted in a total misunderstanding of health and causes, and then you're offered a one-size-fits-all medication or invasive treatments with unpleasant side effects. If this sounds all too familiar, consider a different approach with the New Biology Clinic, founded by Dr. Tom Cowan, a respected natural health doctor, author, and speaker. Dr. Cowan's holistic perspective on health and wellness and a deep understanding of the true nature of health and disease sets this clinic apart. With the New Biology Clinic, it's not about quick fixes and suppressing symptoms. The practitioners take time to understand your unique story, recognizing that health is unique to the individual and that illnesses have a variety of causes, physically and metaphysically. Members of the New Biology Clinic enjoy a flat monthly fee that includes a range of valuable services like health consults as needed, practitioner-led live streams on diverse health topics, access to a members-only resource library, and multiple live group sessions every month. These sessions cover fitness, breathing integration, biofield tuning, guided meditation, EFT tapping, and much more. Unlike traditional healthcare systems that thrive on frequent visits, prescriptions, treatments, and suppressing symptoms, the New Biology Clinic's motivation is to make you healthy and keep you that way. Visit newbiologyclinic.com to learn more and use code THEWAYFORWARD for $50 off your account activation. If you're a member of The Way Forward, email hello@thewayforward.com to receive $150 off your account activation. Your journey to genuine healing begins here. With the law of attraction, the law of resonance, co-creation, I, will sometimes hear a lot of pushback from people that say it's a little bit woo-woo or say that they've tried it, but it doesn't actually work. There's no way this actually works. You just got lucky with what you brought into this reality or with what you're experiencing. And what are some of the other things that people typically get wrong when it comes to the law of attraction? I know we touched on a few already.
Well, I'd say the biggest thing is we call it the image maker lesson. Like, the world outside is just a reflection of what's going on inside. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, this is where we do want to focus on, well, what do I want? Well, I've got to be the person that could receive that. Mm-hmm. And so this is where we've got to do that internal work. Like, it's all self-image and leadership, right? So if, let's say this is a life I want, and I want to, again, we'll just use the word attract, this amount of money and live in this kind of home and make this kind of an impact. Well, who do I need to be in order to reach that goal? And that's where a lot of people get pissed because they're like, well, this is what I want. Well, yeah, but when you understand the way the paradigm works, a paradigm is just a multitude of habits. It's our conditioning, it's our belief system, it's our addictions, it's everything in the self-image. Well, we've got to shift the paradigm, right? So in order to reach this goal, so when you look at everything operates on vibration. So if you just imagine there's all these lines, well, if this is my current results, but this is what I desire, I got to be the person up here. So I'm going to have to walk, talk, think like this person. I can no longer be this person. And the challenge here, Alec, is that most people were not taught how to make decisions.
Yeah.
And decision, it really means to cut off from, alibis, excuses, procrastination. So I've got to be able to make decisions like this person, but this is scary. And then we see we're saying that fear is the way that controls the masses. So we're going to have to, we're going to bump up against this fear. And that's what keeps people in comfort and complacency. That is the enemy. And everything in our world keeps us in this place of comfort and complacency, right? Look at everything. It's all fast, convenient, right? So people are stuck here. I mean, is it working for us? No. I mean, our population is more overweight than ever. We just see that it's not working. So we have to do something that is really uncomfortable, that goes against the programming, right? I was thinking, I have a client who's a lawyer, and she was just talking about this, and she applies legal and what she learned to what we teach. And I love it. She's doing these videos. And she was saying, well, and it's really tough once you create this new self-image. Like you're like, okay, that's not working for me. This is who I am. So I am, I lead, by example. I eat healthy. My thoughts are on this vibration. And so again, at first, because you've been operating out of a lower self-image, and I just say oftentimes, again, it's rooted in lack, limitation, and all the victim stuff. But you got to start at first. You got to write out that script. Well, who do I need to be? Oh, I'm so happy and grateful now that I am, an international mentor, and I'm a heart-centered, integral, truthful leader. Well, I didn't grow up that way. I grew up where, there was a lot of being dishonest and cutting corners and ripping people off, different things like that. Like I had to write out that person, and then I had to become her. And so this is a daily practice. I mean, how do we shift the paradigm? It's through repetition. Repetition is the mother of all learning. So it's the repetition. And the only other way we shift our paradigms is through emotional impact. And usually when emotional impact happens, it's usually quite negative. I mean, 9/11 is a great example. So we want to shift our paradigms just through repetition as much as possible. And it's that connection to the emotion. Remember, that's the connection to the subconscious. And like you said, the subconscious is in every cell of your body, right? So again, this is just all, it's opportunities to go inside and do that internal work. But that's where people will start studying this and they'll say, it doesn't work. Well, it's just like, remember when they used to say, because in Ayurveda, I used to lead these 21-day cleanses. I got really big into cleansing, every kind of cleanse, you name it. I think of Mike Cardamone, right? So Mike and I talk all that.
I'm going to meet him soon. So.
Yeah. Oh, and it's interesting.
Urine therapy, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, he got me in, and I did a bunch of cleanses that he was working with as well, all these fermentation kits and stuff. Mike. Love him too, right? So I was leading these Ayurvedic, spring and fall challenges. And so, the old theory was, 21 days to change a habit. Well, people would have significant shifts by just eating clean, and that was really the focus. But ultimately, did they shift their paradigm? Well, many of those people will go back to the same way of eating and living. We don't know when that paradigm's going to shift. You got to be consistent. Most people are going to need a significant amount of time. That's why even when they're working with a coach or a mentor, it's not going to shift in 3 weeks. It's not going to shift in 21 days. Like, I believe in the holy instant. So I always say that things can shift really quickly. And we've all had those moments where, our awareness just shifted and we're like, whoa, I cannot go back to that way. But ultimately, it is tough. Robin Sharma, he has this quote that change is really hard in the beginning. It's messy in the middle, but it's glorious in the end. And so those people that say, oh, this doesn't work, It's because they were not consistent. They were not persistent enough. So
yeah, I have so much to add there. So you brought up earlier that discipline, you can think of it as like, what are you a disciple to? Because disciple is in the word discipline. So what are you a disciple to every single day, right? And I think that for the people who are skeptical of the, the law of attraction, of co-creation, their own co-creative capacity to bring about the reality that they want, they're not doing the work on a day-to-day basis while setting the intention for what they want, aligning their thoughts, their belief systems, their foundational belief systems, right? Their feelings and their daily words and actions. Like all of those things have to be aligned. I'd also say prayers and intentions, right?
Yeah.
All of those things have to be aligned consistently on a day-to-day basis, because ultimately what we're dealing with in this realm, as I've come to understand it, is that this reality we experience is an amalgamation of overlapping thoughts, feelings, belief systems. Basically, we're all co-creating this experience together, with also the creator as the ultimate source of creation, imbuing this reality with what it wants, right? With love, ultimately at its root. And so we're in this dance of the creator's co-creative capacity, which is the strongest that we can access and be in alignment with all of us also co-creating this experience. The reason I bring that up is because sometimes based on our own conditioning, our own, things that have been impressed upon us via the various ways that I said earlier, we may think that this thing that we want, this reality we want to experience, is going to come this specific way on this specific date, right? And it may not come that way. But ultimately, if you are doing the work on a day-to-day basis to continue to do that, and even dealing with those circumstances where it seems like, okay, this is just not going to happen. But you know what? I have such a strong foundational pull towards this thing that I know even if I experience, let's say, you want to have a total shift in your business, right? And then the next day you have a massive loss. Like, how bad do you actually want that thing? Yeah. And if it is in alignment, if you are truly in alignment with God, then you will continue on that path. And if not, then it might not be for you. And you might have some other blessing come, into your awareness. But the point is, on a day-to-day basis, if we are consistently aligning our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, actions, intentions, prayers, and spoken words together, then that thing will inevitably come. And what we're doing in that action, in that instance of aligning all of those things, is we are programming, this is the way that I see it, the waters of our body, like the work of Veda Asam Saramoto. We're water-based beings, 2/3 water by weight, 99% water molecularly. We're programming the waters of our body to come into coherence with that thing that we are aligning with. And then that emanates outward through our biofield, which then emanates outward through the ether. And the more that we can be that strong, coherent field that is imbued with, that is suffused with the energy of whatever it is we are wanting to co-create, that is going to expand outward as we continue to do these daily practices like meditation and prayer to really get quiet and centered with that co-creative capacity, that union with God. That is going to continue to flow through us and expand more and more each day, more and more each day. You have a challenge, okay, you start contracting a little bit, you work through that challenge, and you break through even more, expand more and more and more. And the more that you consistently do that, that thing will inevitably come. It may not come in the exact way that you intended for it to, but it will inevitably come because you have made it so. You are such a strong, coherent field that even if you are existing and having to play with the overlapping amalgamation of other people's co-creative capacities, your co-creative capacity will rise above because your field is much stronger than theirs is, and you will actually bring them into coherence and in some ways maybe help them come along your journey to bring about what it is you want. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Well, that's a Pygmalion effect, right? That's a butterfly effect. And that's why I think that, even when I started learning about, some of these, practices and mindset, I just feel like once we increase our awareness, you have I believe personally that you do have a moral obligation to really lead, because, it's that small percent that can bring the rest along. And, that's quite exciting, because I think we think, oh, we got to change the whole planet. Well, that can feel really exhausting and heavy. And that might be part of old paradigms that are, not serving. I think that just when you know better, you got to do better. And that again, like just, I don't know, it's just super exciting because it's like, that's why we inspire. And like you said, because that's where we magnetize others.
Right. By changing yourself though first. Like
right. It's
you
all
want to
about
change the planet,
self.
it's changing yourself first, because the only way in my mind that you're really going to be able to do impactful work at that level is by becoming such a strong, coherent field yourself.
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi was a great example of this.
Exactly.
He moved in unison, millions of people, and he took over the British Army without a gun.
Yeah.
It was love. But such a great example. I mean, I have him on my leadership wall just as an example to be that change that I wish to see in the world. Mm-hmm. Right? Again, this is just a great time to, when you look at like the election and stuff, everybody thinks, Trump's going to do this. Well, again, you're outsourcing. All Trump is, and any of these other, I'm from Canada, Trudeau. But anyways, but all they are is a reflection of mass consciousness.
Yeah.
So whatever you don't like in Trump, heal that in you first. Right? Whatever you love, because there's good and bad in everything. Mm-hmm. And look for the good things. Like that's what we want to focus on. And also pray for him. Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't want to be him.
Hell no.
Right. So, truly leadership is that it's an inside job. We've got to stop going out here for everything. We've got to go inside here. And we do need to be that change we wish to see in the world. Everything else is just a reflection. Mm. And so, I'm grateful. And, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of drama. There was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of craziness. Well, I know right away that's part of, it's why even as a young girl, like even starting to date, I was attracted to those kind of guys that brought that craziness because that's what I knew love was. Now I know drama, chaos, and clutter, walk the other way. Like I know now, right? Like again, when you know better, you're going to do better. Mm. So I mean, I think leadership it's just constant. And like you said, it's not that it if you want like to be in shape, let's say you want 6-pack abs or something, you can't just start eating good and working out for a month and be like, or even 6 months and be like, whoa, I'm done. I'm going to go back to Cheetos and drinking beer. Well, good luck. I mean, leadership, moving towards the results that you want, it's a daily practice. It's every day. You're going to have to be consistent. You're going to have to be committed. You're going to have to be persistent. And, it's not going to be easy. Some days are going to be really, really tough. Most people give up when they're really close to reaching a big goal. And I always say, like, this is one thing I say, Alec, is this or something better. Now manifest for me. Because we are creating and co-creating with something bigger than ourselves. And this is where like the ego and the paradigm's like, oh, this is what I want. I want to be a millionaire. I want to do this. I want to do that. Well, maybe God has a bigger, better plan for me. Mm-hmm. So this is where we got to get out of the way. So yes, you maybe you get clear on what it is you desire personally and professionally, maybe even a money goal. But also, I'm going to also surrender to this. Maybe there's something even bigger and better that I have no idea. And this is truly like that sovereign being that is living from their heart. And this is something that I'm continually aligning with as well. I mean, I've been diving really deep into heart coherence. I didn't grow up in a family, again, where there was a lot of talk about feelings or being connected to your heart. I don't think very few of us were, like Bob would always say, maybe 2% of us had like really enlightened parents, but most of us ultimately didn't. They did the best that they could, and all the best parts in me are them, but also the parts I don't like so much, are also part of them. But so it's like, again, I think that's why heart coherence and just diving deeper into the heart, because it's so easy for me. And that's part of like that A-type personality and that older, being the oldest in my family is like, go, go, go. And it's funny. I'd go to these events with Bob and I'm such a serious student. I mean, I'm a good student. And I'd get there and I'd be like working really hard. And Bob would say, you need to just go have a sleep. I'd be like, what? Go have a sleep? I'm not going and having a sleep. Because force negates. So we got to connect more to our heart. Most people are stuck in their head. Even when you look at the Hopi prophecies, and they have these like drawings and rocks from thousands of years. It's like you have the one path where the man is disconnected from his heart. His head is literally not attached to his body. And there's some prophecies around that, which we're not going to get into. And then there's the other one where he's connected to his heart. I think this is a time of like really connecting to our heart and connecting to others that are also leading and connected to their hearts, and having those people around you that love you enough to tell you when you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Right. And because if you have a bunch of yes people around you, then, you know, there's that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you probably need to get the heck out of the room. Right. So, you know, I think that's where we need each other.
Amen.
I mean, I miss the mark all the time, but at least I have enough awareness now that I'm like, oh, I know that pattern, right? And that was like the part with what happened the last 3 years, like the isolation and not being with each other. It really made us sick because we need each other. I mean, I don't know what the stats are here, but where I live, like homelessness, addiction, you know, mental health, it's gone up 300 times. We need to connect. Remember, like during the event, we shared that film by, what's his name?
Aubrey Marcus and Charles Eisenstein.
And I just
The Gathering of the Tribe,
The Gathering of the Tribe.
Yeah.
I actually just shared that with my clients again. I've shared that a few times.
Such a beautiful
one.
And
it's like the meeting of minds, the coming together, the heart coherence. Right. And so I think that's why even like coming here to meet in person, like my heart was just like, I was like shaking, so excited just to be like, wow, like that's when we're connected to our heart. And I'm like, oh, this is exactly where I need to be. Is, you know, initially it's a little uncomfortable because it's just such a burst of energy. But I do believe it is that gathering that 100%. We've got to get back to. I mean, and I'm so grateful for, again, things like Zoom and being able to be connected to people around the world. So you got to look for the good, especially even with the rollout of AI, because there's a lot of negativity. Well, there's a lot of good in it. We can use these things for the good.
Yeah. All these things are tools.
Right. And we want to use them versus those things using us.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So...
yeah, the experience of gathering in one place with people who are understanding the power of our ability to co-create individually, but most importantly, collectively, is so palpable. Yeah. And that's why I feel so blessed to, you know, run the events that I do, like Confluence, our festival, like gathering together in one place like that with that many people who are on the same general path is truly incredible. Like you literally feel that in your heart the entire time.
That's that vibration, right?
Yeah.
And I think your next one is in May, right?
Yeah, in May.
I was just looking and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be there.
You will.
Yeah.
You will
so I mean, obviously being Canadian and being unvaxxed, all that stuff, like I couldn't go, but I'm like, I need to get there because these are my people. Like,
we had a lot of Canadians there at our version in April of this year. And it was such an incredible experience.
So I love that you're doing that. And I think that that's what we need to do is we need to come together with others because that's where, again, our energy's magnified.
Right. Well, if you have a lot of people who are acting as or on the path of becoming strong, coherent fields themselves, what Eileen McCusick will talk about is how that creates concentric rings of fields that are then expanding out that represent even stronger coherent fields that are overtaking and entraining weaker incoherent fields. And I don't remember exactly what David Hawkins says, but he has this sort of graph where he says for every like one individual who is operating at like the highest possible level, which I think bliss is the highest one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is operating at that level. It overcomes like some crazy amount of number of people who are operating at the lowest level. Yeah. And it just shows the work that we can do. And, you know, I reflect back on a few weeks ago, we had that experience where there was this massive traumatic thing that occurred in Western North Carolina that was, you know, incredibly sad, where a lot of people lost their lives. And then we saw that this hurricane was heading towards Florida. And never in my life, you know, I'm not that old, I'm 32, but never in my life have I seen so many people charged up towards prayer, not praying from a position of, oh God, like we are helpless, please help these people in Florida with this hurricane coming, but rather coming from, hey, let's pray for this because I really think that we can change the outcome of this. And I think, reflecting back on what I said in this conversation, it was like, for lack of a better term, a collective sort of rock bottom, if you will, in that a lot of us looking at the situation in Western North Carolina and seeing just the absolute just chaos and just some of the horrible images coming out of there, and like people sharing that there was just bodies everywhere is really traumatic. And so for those on the outside of it, we're like feeling helpless to, how do we overcome, something like that? How do we deal with this weather modification, things like this? And then because we were in such a state of helplessness, I think whether people realize this or not, it was like, oh, the only place to go because I feel so helpless is back inside of here. And then it was this like instant realization, or this 100th monkey effect type of thing that happened, where, me, Dr. Edith, and Eileen were leading meditations, directing our thought energy to bring coherence to the skies near Florida. But then so many other groups were doing the exact same thing. And what's incredible about it is to make it sort of less woo-woo, if you will, and make it more tangible in reality. This event that was occurring in Florida was a hurricane, which is water. It's a water-based phenomenon of weather. And you could argue that likely this hurricane that was happening was probably man-made to some degree, because I do acknowledge that there are some crazy things going on at that level. But because it was water-based, we could reference the work of Veda Austin and Masaru Emoto in showing how our individual thought energy can directly impact the physical expression, orientation, and structure of water itself in reality. Then what can our collective thought energy do when oriented towards something in reality, especially something that is largely comprised of water? And I say all that because I'm not going to make the claim that, it was our collective prayer and intention and thought energy that brought that hurricane from a category 5, saying it was going to be one of the most catastrophic things that ever occurred, down to then a category 3 by the time it broke landfall. And yes, some damage did occur, but it seemed to just very instantaneously go from something that was going to be ultra catastrophic to being just a, minor inconvenience, yet that yes, did cause a lot of damage, but not what it was intending to, or what they were projecting it to be. And I really, truly think, I can't say with certainty that this is the reason, it was because so many of us were forced to like re-recognize, like, oh my God, we can do this. Like, we are praying now with a not, oh God, please help them, but oh God, I'm commanding this energy that is inside of me. I'm directing this thought energy to bring coherence to that skies, because that's how powerful we are individually and collectively. And I think it really did have that level of an impact.
100%. And, this is the difference, like you said, because I think this is what really turns people off church too. And it's like, the priest preaching, but in a way that's fearful.
Yeah.
I don't believe, I believe that Jesus was a teacher and a healer on this planet, but his message was never to put people in fear. It was faith. And so what did you all do? You came together and it was faith.
Yeah.
Right. And
we were so sure. We were so sure of it, right?
And there's so many examples. There's so many examples of this, and even just in history. And, you even just think of, we've proven this, even the yogis that can levitate, right?
Yeah.
Again, we have no idea the potential energy in the human body. Okay. So, we would say there's infinite potential within each and every person. It's just most people think that they're limited.
Right.
Now, we have infinite potential. By the way, DuPont scientists in the 70s wanted to measure the potential energy in the human body. And they realized when they measured the potential energy in the human body, as you know, we have all these new machines and just measuring, that the potential energy in the human body is 11 million kilowatts per pound of energy, which could light up a large industrial city for a week.
Wow.
The value of that, by the way, is that you're worth, I think it's $88 billion.
Wow.
And that's in the 70s.
Wow.
Okay. But since the 70s, so that was DuPont scientists, they discovered that the potential energy in the human body is unlimited. And so when you look, so this is a fact that the average person is maybe accessing 5 to 10% of their potential. We have unlimited. This is the yogis that can levitate and astral travel and different miracles. Yeah. So we should expect miracles. And really the miracle is within us. But we got to recognize that potential energy, and we got to develop it, because that's coming back to the belief. Most people are stuck in limiting beliefs that they lack, right? It really makes you think, and it's quite exciting, because I think like just even accessing 1% more of your potential is like a quantum leap. It's amazing. Yeah. Right. So, 100%.
Yeah. And again, to reference Veda Austin, that's why I love her work and Masaru Emoto's work so much, because it is indicating like pretty clearly that our thought energy has an impact on reality itself. Given that water permeates all facets of reality, even if you just think of it at that level, without getting into like the metaphysical happenings and the non-physical forms, you can see in water from their work that our thought energy has a direct impact on water. And therefore, given that we're water-based beings and water permeates all facets of this reality, you could probably conclude that individual and most importantly, collective thought energy helps bring about things in reality, which recontextualizes politicians trying to get you to outsource power to them, politicians trying to get you to be afraid. Even those in the quote truther community who are sharing information, and again, information is helpful at some level. Like at some point, I needed to learn about the harms of vaccines so I can make better decisions. I need to learn about the darker agendas going on in this reality. I need to learn about the darkness in myself. There comes a time, though, individually and collectively, that if you are perpetually focusing on those things almost exclusively, you are helping to co-create more of those things. And again, going back to the work of Veda Austin, I'll just share in one of the examples that I think is so incredible. So first, the thing that Veda will say is that water can, of course, tell if you're lying to it. What I mean by that is if you are not aligning your thought with feeling, the difference between just thought and thought energy, right? Because energy comes with emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. So thought energy, meaning aligning your thoughts and feelings, water will not imprint in the same way that it does if it's just thought, right? So it has to be thought energy. And then, so take that as context. The experiment that she did with eggs is absolutely mind-blowing. So Veda did a series of experiments where she's taken free-range eggs, just one single free-range egg, and set them in proximity to 12 caged eggs. Now, for context, when she cracks open a free-range egg and freezes the albumin, which is the runny part of the egg, she finds that there are 6 patterns that she will see that basically just look like when this albumin is frozen, it has so much beauty and coherence to it, which is reflecting an egg coming from a chicken that was raised as chickens are supposed to be raised, right? Conversely, when she takes a caged egg, which is coming from a chicken that was pumped with hormones, antibiotics, that was fed an unnatural diet, raised under fluorescent lights in cages in a perpetual state of fight or flight, and cracks open and freezes its albumin, she finds that it's in a total state of discord. And like when you see the difference between the two, the free-range egg and the caged egg, it is a stark contrast. They look like completely different things with the frozen albumin in this petri dish, right? And so when Veda takes one free-range egg, sets 12 caged eggs around it, right? 12 caged eggs, one free-range egg, and then leaves it overnight, and then cracks them open and freezes the albumin, she has found, and she's done this a number of times, that all of the caged eggs, just by being in proximity to the free-range egg, have now all improved in their coherence, in the crystallography in this petri dish, meaning their albumin now has the characteristics of a free-range egg just by being in proximity to the one free-range egg. The free-range egg itself was not negatively impacted in any way. It still maintained its coherence. And so, can we say with 100% certainty that that applies to the human body? No, I'm not going to say that it for sure applies to the human body. Although I would think it's a strong indication of what's going on with the human body. And so, if we do apply that to us, what would that mean? That would mean that the more that we can, like I referenced earlier, become that strong, coherent field, we can overtake and entrain the weaker, incoherent fields around us and help bring them into coherence, which then recontextualize like, why the am I like so worried about what's going on with the government and all these things? Like, why am I not just focusing on making myself so coherent? Because that will then emanate outward, impacting my reality, bringing it into coherence naturally, just by focusing on harnessing my own power, my own authority given to me by God, the creator, source, the one mind, whatever you want to call it, harnessing my own agency. And the thing that I think is the scariest when you adopt this understanding is that you realize like, fuck, there's no more excuses for my experience anymore. Like it is me bringing this into being. And that is both incredibly empowering, and it can also be incredibly confronting and incredibly scary because there's no more excuses anymore. Yes, at points in your life, you were victimized. You had shit impressed upon you. But now that you are aware, there's no more excuses. You are in the driver's seat.
Yeah, 100%. And Alec, even as you're sharing this, it just reminds me of the power of love, and I think of like, we're more than aware. I think that's the thing with like leadership. Leaders are aware that there's problems, but real leaders are not focused on the problem. They give all their energy to the solution. We're aware that there's a lot of darkness. Again, if we focus on the darkness, we're just going to magnetize that. Why would we focus? Because where focus goes, energy flows. And when you think of darkness, well, it's necessary because it's, again, there's the law of opposites or the law of polarity. And so how would we know what darkness was how would we know what light was if we didn't experience darkness? The same thing with hot and cold, masculine, feminine, all these, right? So, I always reflect on, because there's a lot of talk about the problems. There's a lot of talk about the darkness on the planet. I always say, well, how do you get rid of the darkness? Like if we walked into this room and the whole room was dark, how do we get rid of the darkness? Flip on the switch, we turn on the light. So, it's exciting because I think, when we have that awareness, it's like, yeah, I have a responsibility here. There's an obligation here in a good way to be the light. Do I need to be perfect? No. I'm imperfectly perfect. But when I know, again, I need to do better, because when we have that awareness, it's not to focus on the problem. That was even like with the event, right? There was a lot of like focus on problems, and we talked about that. It was like, okay, well, how can we offer solutions? So the whole focus on even the pillars and everything was like, let's move people towards the solution, which is, again, which was all around being sovereign. Mm-hmm. Well, a sovereign being is doing the work, right? And unfortunately, most people won't do the work. Leadership is not popular because you're going to have to do the work. But again, I think just from somebody who's lived in that place of victim consciousness for too long, it is harder to stay in that place of darkness and that place of lack and that place of victim consciousness. It is much easier to do the work. And again, all of us just got to inject more light into this. And yeah, let's just stop focusing. That's the way the darkness, one of my favorite books, and I shared this with you before, was Napoleon. It's a book that they didn't allow to be published. It was actually Napoleon Hill's wife. And it was called How to Outwit the Devil, which could be called How to Outwit the Paradigm. Oh my gosh, is it ever? It is just so good, because once you understand the way the paradigm works, and we call the paradigm the devil, that's what it wants you to do. It wants you to focus on the darkness. It wants you to focus on the trauma and all the victim consciousness. We got to stop doing that. We got to stop giving our attention to all these things that are not serving us, and where we're, because again, it's just disease forming. Mm-hmm. We've got to focus on, I remember when I started studying with Bob, I asked Bob about this, because in Tony's work, we use a little bit of sign language, right? To move people forward. It's like, pain or pleasure, right? Move them towards what they want, because most people will do everything they can to get out of pain. That's why we have people addicted and lining up at Tim Hortons and Starbucks, right? Because it's like all those ways that we cope. And I asked Bob about that. And Bob said, well, why would we ever get them to focus on the pain? Let's just get people moving towards what it is they really desire most of. And most people just want to feel better. They just want to be happier. Mm-hmm. And I really love that. And so, let's just stop focusing on all the negative and the darkness and the drama, and let's start focusing on, this oneness and this world that we all want to, create and co-create together. And I do believe, it sounds really cliche, but it's the power of love.
Yeah.
And, even as you're sharing, and I haven't heard of that experiment, and I love it. I can't wait for you to pop up the pictures.
Like it is visible to the naked eye. Like it is incredible. And she's done it twice. And one more addition to that, she set from the same batch of free range eggs, one to the side, and then from the same batch of cage eggs, another to the side, just to show that, okay, this one that she set to the side, you crack it open, freeze the album in, and it has no coherence to it. Just to show that it was very clear this one single free-range egg had a tremendous impact on these 12 caged eggs.
Which is absolutely amazing. And it reminds me, like, even that's all Dr. Emoto's work. I dove deep into his work, right? It's like, right, just the power of, again, our thoughts. But you know what I did, and it was probably about 15 years ago, even with my kids, is I did that rice experiment.
Yeah.
Have you ever done the rice experiment?
I've never done it, but I'm familiar with it. Can
so
you share
I did
for those
it.
who are not familiar?
Yeah, I did the rice experiment, and I decided to do it with my kids because I was learning and I wanted to do it. So you basically take and you just cook white rice. You have clean jars, and it suggested you have 3 jars, right? 1 jar is a neutral jar. 1 jar this is your love jar, let's say. This is where your gratitude, all your positive thoughts. And then this jar is like, and my kids and I wanted to get them involved because, of course, we're doing Waldorf education. I want them to learn to think for themselves. So it's like, I hate you, right? It's kind of like Dr. Emoto's, with the water. And so every day you spend time with these jars. You don't want them like too close to each other. You just kind of put them, but
one you're suffusing with
one's
love.
just neutral, right? So you just leave this jar. You don't even touch that jar. One is the love. You spend time putting all your love, like anything that makes you feel good, all your positive thoughts, your gratitude. And the other one is like hate. And, and it is crazy. I think it does take a little bit of time. So you have to be consistent with it. And I did it with the kids, but like the jar that's like love, it might have a little bit of starting to spoil, but it's pretty much like the neutral jar. If I remember correct, I'm pretty sure the neutral jar just kind of stayed the same. But the one that you're sending, like, I hate you, it could be those swear words. It is like rotten.
Wow.
It is amazing. And I actually posted that. It's kind of when people first were using social media a little bit more because it was so mind-blowing. And it shows you like, so what do most people say even when they look at themselves in the mirror? They're not saying loving, kind thoughts to themselves. They're like, oh, you're fat or, and this is the way, like, if most people were aware of their thought energy, and most people are not aware, but they would be shocked. And so I think that's like the first step is just becoming aware of what you're thinking about most of the time, what you're saying to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And do like, I studied body talk for like 15 years. And part of that is this course called Free Fall, and it's where you literally get naked. And it worked out. It took me quite a few years to do this with Dr. Valtime, who was leading it at the time, because you're working with others. It's a safe environment, and there are other professionals. And especially being a child of abuse, right? So a lot of shit came up, like getting naked. Then you have to describe yourself, and then you have to like look in a mirror, like just get naked and go in front of a mirror. Like what thoughts? Look at all the different parts of your body. Do you say loving, kind things to your body? And so after this really ignited me, especially after I did the course, because even when I was going through it, the areas where I was hurt as a child, I couldn't even go there. And then we also had to ask, people that we'd maybe been intimate with or knew us. I remember I'd asked at that time, one of my boyfriend who I was with in the Cayman Islands, like, what do you think of my naked body? He was like, I don't know. We live in the Cayman Islands and you wear a snowsuit to bed. So I had no idea. It was just the way that I was protecting myself. But it's, it's pretty profound. And what I did with this was I started learning about painting, body painting. I have a friend who's German, of course, from the Waldorf School, and she uses body painting as a therapeutic, even couples. So you're like, so I did this like naked body painting birthday party for my kids because they were just little, right? And, they're just wearing their underwear. But it was interesting because when my son first did this, and so it's to really allow the child to do whatever feels right. So my son, at first, he just painted himself all brown. He looked like a monkey. We live on the lake and it's all like natural paint. So, so you let the child do this. And I encourage the parents to too. And of course, they're like, she's a Waldorf mom, so this is okay. But it was pretty uncomfortable for many of them, I'm sure. And then, the part of the therapeutic is to go and wash that off. And then to repaint yourself. Well, so I just was observing the practice. I'd done this a few times myself, but my son painted himself as rainbows after that.
Wow.
It was like, wow. So I went down that
what
whole
a beautiful
path.
metaphor for
it was amazing.
Like you paint yourself every day.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
And this is where get in front of the mirror. There are areas of your body that you don't like. Maybe you could like even write nicer words on those areas, like if you were to just imagine.
Yeah.
Because we are all using our imagination, which by the way is a higher mental faculty, or we say it's a spiritual gift, and it's one of our 6. But most people use their imagination against themselves, right? So
100%.
We've got to strengthen these higher mental faculties so that we can be the leaders, so that we can create the life that we desire. And I always say that's the riches. I mean, even prosperity. I mean, some people have paradigms with these words, but what is riches? It's your health, it's your wealth, and it's your happiness. And we should all want to live a rich and fulfilling life. That's our Creator who's operating through us wants us to live a really rich life.
You know what came up for me when you were sharing the rice experiment is, yes, obviously it's incredible seeing that delivering the negative energy, if you will, to this one set of rice means that starts getting very mucky. It's like very clear. But what you said the neutral one was almost identical to the one that you were delivering positive energy to. What's so interesting about I don't even know if that's true or not, but what's interesting.
I'm trying to remember back because that was 15 years ago. I've thought about doing it again.
Let's assume it is. Let's assume it is because I want to make a point.
Yeah.
It actually helps my bias here.
Okay.
Because this is clearly a bias of mine. But what that indicates to me is that the neutral energy that infuses this reality is one of love. And there's actually several different schools of thoughts and I guess you could say different ancient esoteric teachings. And the one I'm thinking of specifically is the Quero people in Peru. I'm reading this book called The Masters of the Living Energy, which is all about the Quero traditions of Peru. And they talk about how the earth, this realm, is suffused with different types of energy, one of which is the living energy. So the energy of the natural, like physical world. And that energy is dominated by 2 different sets of energy. One that is a constructive, creative energy that is naturally infused in nature. And then the other one that only exists in human beings. We have that to draw on, the natural creative energy, but we also have this destructive energy. And you look at the example of the free-range egg, right?
Yeah.
Doing the exact things that chickens have done throughout time without any human intervention, and it's infused with this beautiful crystalline structure. Versus the caged eggs, which are largely dictated by human intervention, which very clearly to the naked eye are infused with this destructive energy. And now that's not to say that human beings are inherently destructive. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that if we work through our conditioning, which you could argue is impressed upon us ultimately at the highest level by Wetiko, this mind virus that exists in this realm. Maybe it's an intentional aspect of this realm going through the veil of forgetting so that we engage with the quote negative polarity so that we have the context for how beautiful and important the positive aspects are, irrespective of how it is all drawn out. Ultimately, if we, being that we have this imaginative aspect of us, imagine along the lines of the beautiful co-creative natural energy that suffuses the natural world, we can magnify that and send just massive ripple effects of birthing beautiful things in this realm unlike no other. And so that's what I think about when it comes to that rice experiment. And that also brings up in me, and I wanted to ask this earlier because you touched on it a little bit. So it's like, again, the creator of this realm, I look at it that we exist in a panentheist realm. And what I mean by that is we are individuated aspects of the creator, but ultimately there is one supreme being that is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, all powerful, all knowing, all loving, that is not separate of us, but is unique from us. But we are inextricably linked to it, right? And given that, the creator has its own will, I would think. How do we know whether our individual will and that which we want to create is in alignment with that of the creator?
Well,
sorry, I threw a lot at you there
that's
too.
really big.
I also said so much there, I rambled.
You did, and it's so good, actually. You know, I always reflect that the law works towards the betterment.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's kind of like it feels good. Now, doesn't mean it's easy to get there, but it's like it feels good. It's like,
but there's like there's context there too, right? Because like it could. There's feeling good, meaning it's pleasurable, but then there's like feeling good
I mean
in
from
your
the heart.
Yeah, right.
I mean from the heart. It's kind of like truth. And I know I was listening to some of your other podcasts. It's like, you know that this is truth, like for you, because it feels
deep.
good. It's resonate, right? It resonates. Right. And so I think like what I'm just thinking, because I mean, we do think in picture. I'm thinking of like, all those years just operating out of a lot of that programming that wasn't serving me. It was like, like walking into the door and like feeling like I was constantly smacked in the head. It was like, oh my God, why is this so hard? And that just kept reinforcing I'm a victim and poor me. And, God doesn't love our family because it was something, my mom had a lot of anger towards God. So it was just that reinforcement. But then like finally waking up one day and like realizing, oh my gosh, there's a door handle. It's actually easy. And that's what Neville Goddard talks about, the effortless way, right? What if there's an effortless way? And when we harmonize and understand the laws of our being, and we understand our mind, and we're moving towards the betterment of our own life and society, this is that co-creation, that it's easy. And we can take a big breath and we can just relax and again, just enjoy. Like I believe that our Creator wants us to live this amazing life. But again, it's like, where do we learn and grow the most? It's through the challenges. So everything's perfect. I mean, and I have no idea. I mean, so I'm not going to go too deep here because it's easy to go deep. But I just think like, yeah, you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, what if it doesn't have to be so hard? Mm-hmm. What if it's just easy and it's just like the door? You just discover all along the door had a door handle and you could just open the door and walk through. There's a story that Price Pritchett says that a little book that I sometimes gift my clients. It's called U Squared and it's the fly story. And this reminds me of the fly story. Sometimes the fly will be on the windowsill, like, and then it'll wake up and it's trying to get out of the window, right? And it's like, it like keeps hitting the window. And unfortunately, that fly is usually going to waste all of its energy and just die there. But what it didn't realize was that just maybe a few feet away, it could have just flown out the door, and that's freedom, right? And so I think of that. I think many of us, it's just that programming. It's like, oh, it's got to be hard. And we say force negates, right? It's like we keep pushing, but we're going in the wrong direction.
And how do you know if it's you're coming up against roadblocks that are there, for lack of a better term, to test if you really want this, versus roadblocks that are clearly indicating to you that, this is not the path for you?
I think that what I would do is just check in with my goal. Because you think of someone who, that was part of one of my goals, like, turning 50 this year. It was like, I'm going to be in the best shape of my life. And I felt the oldest.
You got ID'd, right? Share that.
Oh yeah, I got ID'd in Texas. I love Texas, right? Yeah, I was just shocked. But and I love doctors like Dr. Sinclair and Huberman and all these guys that are working towards longevity. And so I'm a biohacker, and I just love that thing. Like, what if my cells could get younger and better? I mean, I felt the oldest when I was in my early 20s. But again, it's like harmonizing. So if I want to live this life of longevity, what's going to keep me youthful? Well, a big part of it is the mindset. Other is being active every day. Again, the more you become aware around, like I said, blessing your water and blessing your food and hanging out with people that make you feel good, it's going to make you young. One of my favorite billionaires, by the way, and there's not a lot, but I love this guy. His name's Naveen John, and he created the Viome. And he talks a lot about leadership. By the way, he came to the States with $5 in his pocket. Wow. He's an innovator. He's pretty amazing. So there's a group of them that kind of hang out, and he created this Viome that measures all the different fluids in your body. And, let's say biologically you're 50, and then it measures, what you are chronologically. I measured at 42, but I have a goal because it even shows me. So his whole thing is food for one person can be one man's nutrients or one man's poison. And so I just love like anything to do with biohacking. But again, a big part of it's going to be your belief too, right? Comes back to what you believe no matter what. But like that was part of my big goal because of course I had gotten sick in my 20s. I just felt so exhausted. I felt like an 80-year-old in my 20s, especially with everything that happened. And so my goal was to be in the best shape of my life. So was it easy? Well, no, because there's a certain habit nature. I mean, one of my old habits was like eating too much sugar. So it's not easy at first because that's part of the paradigm. The paradigm is just a multitude of habits anyways. So I had to take a look at what is, destroying or breaking down my body. We know sugar is detrimental. It has really no positive benefit unless it's coming from like fruit and stuff like that. I mean, right? So although again, I would say mindset is most important, but then there is the strategy. We always say like success is 95 to 98% your mindset and only 2 to 5% the strategy. That's Catherine Ponder's work with the law of prosperity. It's pretty amazing when you start to think of it. So was it easy to do certain things? No, there was challenges because I had to change my habit nature, but I also had to have definiteness of desire. It had to be connected to my heart. What do I really, really, really want? And that's when you're going in the right direction, even though there's challenges and obstacles, because there's going to be.
You have this practice called the deepest why.
Oh, yeah.
I feel that relates to what you just talked about. Can you share what that is? Because I've gone through it and I was bawling my eyes out getting to my deepest why, which is basically getting to like, why do you do what you do? Whatever it is, like whatever the specific
and this
thing
was
is.
Dean Garzioli, who actually had a coach who led him through and did this practice. And I just loved it because, we have to have a deeper why because the going is going to get tough. And if you do not have a deeper why, and most people, if you just ask them, most people will say it's their kids or something. Right. And that's the first level. So there's these 7 levels of why, or 7 levels deep. And this is where we get deeper into the heart, right? When you go through this practice, you got to know your why. The how is none of your business. And that's what most people will focus on when they start moving towards a big goal. They're going to say, and that's what the paradigm does. Mm-hmm. Well, how are you going to do this? Where is the money going to come from? It's the why. And so that's what I would get everybody to check in on is this moving me towards my bigger desire, towards my bigger goal, right? Or is this completely taking me in another direction and I'm experiencing all these challenges? So I think it's that check-in. And I think I do believe, and I make all my clients go through the 7 levels of why. I just love it.
Let's do it right now.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, you do it to me.
Okay, yeah, and we've done it before.
Yeah.
So this is where you would state maybe your big goal, your big personal and professional goal. Maybe you have a money goal. Now you don't have to tell me, but maybe you kind of have an idea of what that looks like.
Let's say I want the way forward to ultimately be with our new membership, this network that permeates the earth, that goes across the entire earth, that is connecting people with like-minded farms, like-minded practitioners, like-minded people near them, that is connecting people with alternative schools near them. And it's this worldwide network of people who are all on the path of health, freedom, and coherence. So that's what I want. Yeah. So now we do the practice.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. So we're going to go through 7 layers. So usually I write it out. I should be okay without a pen and a piece of paper. But I would say to you, Alec, why do you want that?
I would say that because it feels good knowing that there is other community around me who are on the same page.
Okay. So why does that feel good?
Because it helps validate that me and other people are not alone in wanting to create a better paradigm for future generations.
Okay. So why do you want that? Again, you just keep asking why. Why?
Because I think I know at the deepest level that the path humanity is on is destructive. Mm-hmm. And I think that this path of aligning people towards greater health, freedom, and coherence will be ultimately better for mankind, better for future generations.
Okay. So why do you want that? Or why do you, why?
This is where it gets challenging.
right? Because usually by about 4 and 5, you're starting to get more in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I want that because ultimately there's just this essence flowing through me that just knows deep down that it feels right. It just feels like the right thing to do that I really can't put my finger on.
Okay. So why do you feel that way? Or why do you want that? So again, you're always holding the bigger goal at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So why? And I would just encourage you to get more in your heart, because the last one you just said, I think.
Yeah. I want that because it's the ultimate expression of God to create and create in a way that is constructive, that is bringing people together, that is infused with love, that is infused with the spirit of the Creator present in people who are wanting to create a better future. That is where God is found in between all of us who are on that path of creation.
So why do you want that?
As someone who's been through a lot of stuff, like even going through all that stuff, I know that like the love of the Creator is ever present. And I want that because as humanity is collectively going through stuff, I know that like I had to just reorient myself, and now in hindsight, seeing my trauma in a completely different way, that it was ultimately propelling me towards greater self-love, greater cultivation of my power, greater knowing of myself, that if mankind can do the same thing, we can instantaneously transform this reality right now.
Okay. And why is that important to you?
Because God is love and we are acting on the behalf of God.
Yeah, so that's your 7th. Yeah. So it's interesting to watch you as your face, everything started to brighten up and lots of red, feeling that connection to your heart. Are you feeling the emotion of it? Yeah, I could tell by about 5.
Yeah.
4, you went into, I think, then you went down into the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that feel?
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a profound practice. I suggest that, when I'm working with my clients, I suggest they go through this practice every 6 months to just check in, because the how is none of your business.
Mm-hmm.
And really initially, when you're going after a really big goal, a really big dream, a desire, you're not going to know how to do it. I always reflect on like the Wright brothers. They were bicycle mechanics. Their father almost had them institutionalized, thinking they were crazy. And they wanted to put this thing up in the sky. It was like, that'd never been done before. You can't do that. That's crazy. But they had a big desire. Now we can all drive 20, 30 minutes and we can be at an airport, right? So it is the why. The how is none of your business.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're moving towards a bigger why, it's going to get you through those tough times. Yeah.
I think what's really helpful too is the work of someone like Byron Katie or anyone who's...
I love Byron Katie's work. It's amazing.
So her inquiry process and like, is it true,
Yeah.
Those 4 questions to ask yourself about any, belief system that you fundamentally hold. I think things like that, or just adopting the neti principle, which is falsification as a means to seek what is true. Basically what I'm getting at is by discarding all of the things that are clearly not true, that is a way, I would think, to align yourself with what is true, meaning you're aligning yourself with God.
Yeah.
God is love. God is truth. And I think that dissolving one's own conditioned beliefs is the best way, while co-creating, to ensure that which you are wanting to bring into this realm to co-create is ultimately in alignment with God.
Yeah.
It's dissolving your own conditioned beliefs while continuing on the journey of co-creation.
Yeah. I have a great practice if you would like me to share.
Please share.
I mean, I always say the upset and conflict, it is gold. And we all, if we're honest with ourselves, are experiencing hundreds, if not thousands of upsets and conflicts a day, right? And so if we stop seeing it as something bad, but seeing it as something, again, it's being activated, which is the deeper belief, the opportunity is like, okay, it could be just something even as simple as not the challenges you're facing as you're moving through your goal, but it could be you're driving your kids to school and someone cuts you off. Boom, I'm upset. What we don't realize is that it's like when you get to the root of the upset, it usually has nothing to do with the fact that the guy cut you off, right? It's like pulling a needle through a haystack. And when you go to the root of it, it's like, because this is the transpersonal psychology work that I do. And one of my teachers, Diedrich Walsek from the Choose Again, and he was a child survivor of the Holocaust. He was in Japanese concentration camps, became a famous footballer and then a raging alcoholic, as he would say. He's got these 6 steps to freedom. And I love him. So I lead clients through this work too. It's really great. But it's first of all, recognizing that there is an upset, right? And it's recognizing that, okay, there's a deeper belief here. So I always say, like, just even shorten the 6 steps, like, well, in this moment, what am I believing? Right? It could be like I'm powerless. It could be like I'm alone or I'm unlovable or I'm bad, whatever it is. I mean, when you look at the root of the belief systems, there's something rooted there. And the second question would be, is this true? I mean, yeah, we can behave badly, but at the root of who we are, we're spirit. Can spirit ever be bad? No. I mean, spirit is inherently good. Mm-hmm. So again, just recognizing that when the upset or conflict comes up, whatever that is, and again, it could be being expressed through a challenge or whatever, even through our partner, what am I believing in this moment? Because when you do transpersonal and you trace it back and you go through the steps, it's usually like, yeah, I'm 5 years old. My parent has forgotten to pick me up on the first day of kindergarten. Right. Like, it's not, usually we think it's those big traumas. It's just something that just continues to add up and it's been just reinforced for a long time. Right. So it's just getting to the root of the limiting belief. Remember I said just shorten belief system for BS. Mm-hmm. The upset and the conflict is always just showing us that I got sucked into to some sort of a pattern or a belief. Mm-hmm. And it's not true.
What were the additional 4 things? You said the first 2.
So the first step is you recognize that I am upset. The second step is who's experiencing. Well, the first step is I'm upset. I'm angry, right? I just had an argument with my partner. Yeah. First step, I'm upset. Who's experiencing the upset? Because oftentimes we deflect or we project. Yep. Well, sure, your partner might be upset, but the reality is who's upset? I am. 100% responsibility.
Taking ownership, yeah.
The third step is feel the feelings. What am I feeling? Oh yeah, I'm pissed. I have a feeling chart, so I'll use, because we're kind of addicted to certain feelings. I know sometimes they're like, even for myself, oh, I'm disappointed. That's not the feeling. We know that, right? That's the ego. But it's going deeper into those feelings, pulling out a few. I would say pull out a few. Maybe they pull out 5 or 6. Then it's like reading them back. Which one of these feelings has the biggest charge? Oh, it's rage. Okay. Well, is this the first time you've ever experienced rage? Most people will be like, nope, I know this feeling. Like, this is like, I'm best friends with this feeling, Okay, well, let's feel that feeling. So you get the person to really embody, like, feel it. Just let them know you're in a safe space. Feel the feeling and go as far back in your memory as you can to maybe the first time you felt this way. Oh, interesting. And they'll have the oddest memory, but I say, don't question it. It's the first memory that pops up, right? And sometimes they can't go even beyond a few years ago, and that's okay, but you just start doing it. And you're getting into the good stuff when they go kind of to that 0 to 7 or 9 years of age. And so they bring up a memory, and I say in short story form. So this is where we're not going into counseling. We're not regurgitating the whole thing. It's like, what's going on? Oh, I'm 5 years old and my mom is drunk on the couch or something. Oh. So that's the next step is, well, what was my belief about myself, or what was my perception about me at that time? Oh, she must not love me, because why would she do that? Like, who knows? Like you kind of guide them. But what I love about these processes is it's not about me telling the person, it's me guiding them and they come up with all the answers. Right. I'm just sitting there going, okay. And then
Just acting as a mirror for them.
Exactly. And I mean, of course, they are a mirror. We're all mirrors for each other. And then you ask them, you say, okay, so the deeper belief is I'm unlovable. And then you'd say, well, do you see all the ways that this belief is showing up in your life? They're like, oh my gosh, right? That's the paradigm looking for evidence. I'm so unlovable, right? So, and then it's like, well, is this working for you? Are you getting your carrot? No. Is it true? No. Do you want to heal this deeper belief? Yes. Okay, so then we do mirror work. And this is where I would lead you through, and you would say to me, like, please forgive me for believing that I'm unlovable. And I'd respond, Alec, thank God that's not true. You are love. You embody love. You're just so loving. And then we seal the deal with a thank you. So you'd be like, thank you. And you know, I get them to breathe. Kind of watch people, because you'll notice like if they're tight or holding that energy, so you just want them to breathe to help release it and to really, truly accept that I am love. My worth is unchangeable. My worth is, right? You know, I am love. And then I mirror it back to them. So I'm like, please forgive me for believing I'm unlovable. I know that belief. And then of course you'd be like, well, thank God, that's ridiculous. You're lovable, right? And so I'd say thank you. And then the other part of the mirroring is, you would say to me, please forgive me for forgetting that my worth is inherent and my worth is established by God. I am love. I am whatever, anything that feels good around love. And I'd say, well, thank God, Alec, that's truth. That's who you really are. It just feels so good. And then you have these thank yous that seal the deal. So those are the 6 steps to freedom. If you're interested, there is a lot, you know, with Diedrich. He's actually one of my other mentors, and he's 88 as well. He's pretty amazing. He does he's done Dr. Gabor Mate. They've done a lot of kind of work together. There's a lot of really great YouTubes. But for me, that was a game changer, because I recognized as well with all this other work, it was all those nasty beliefs that I was unlovable. There must be something wrong with me. I mean, I couldn't even save my parents. That was that overly responsible. If you feel responsible for the people in your life, by the way, what is the deeper belief of that if you can't save them?
Right.
I am bad.
Right.
These are all foundational beliefs that a young child think, I'm a good boy, I'm a bad boy, right? So it's getting to the root of all the BS and remembering again who you are.
Yeah. I experienced that exact thing, that exact belief system that you just mentioned there at the end, because when my dad was at rehab when I was younger, I was the one holding my mom at night, making sure she was okay. So I didn't feel safe unless my mom was expressing that she was okay. So I would try to control my environment. And if my environment would not reflect how I want it to be, I would then be like, oh, I'm not good enough to bring my environment or make my mom feel good. So I must be fundamentally bad.
Right. And then you would, of course, that's what we do, is then we, like our whole life, we keep going through these experiences and then the paradigm, and you could say the ego too, I guess, like it depends, because again, it depends, but like, because people have paradigms even around words now. But when you look at the paradigm, I know, so it's interesting, but the paradigm's always looking for evidence. It's looking for evidence that I'm a piece of crap. So again, you get the evidence, just keeps reinforcing the deeper belief. But it's not true. And that's why, like, even with our kids, like, we don't want to label them as you are bad or you are this. No, you're behaving in a way that's not appropriate right now, right? So, I mean,
you're not behaving like yourself.
Right. And that's this whole thing with labeling. Like, everything's labeled now. I'll even have people that come to me like, I have this, I have that. I say, well, we don't label here.
Yeah.
Who you are is spirit. And oftentimes, you know, these labels are just, it's because the person has been stuck in their lower mental faculties. They've been stuck in fear, and we got to strengthen the higher mental faculties and help them remember who they are.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
I love what you just said there about labels too, because I think we're in a time where there's an agenda of labels on all sides of the spectrum. Because what happens when you take on superficial labels, you take on that as your identity, and then you are attached to that belief system associated with that label, to the point that when that belief system is inevitably knocked down or comes crashing down, as all belief systems do, you take that as you being knocked down and crashed down. So when the belief system itself is being attacked or being exposed for being fraudulent, or the belief system is dying, you then take that as you dying. And we're in a war of belief systems right now that are carried out through people attaching on and clinging on to labels of who and what they are. And it's tough because I think it's natural as human beings to want to have identity groups and want to relate to groups of people and have a community. But when that community is centered around, rather than the art of creation itself, or centered around God, and I say that in a non-religious context, or if it's not centered around just the process of seeking truth, then that community is very fragile. If it's centered around, a foundational belief system and it's so entrenched and dogmatic, it is subject to crumbling. And that's, how cults are formed.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to get too much into like masculine and feminine energy because there's a lot of confusion around that right now.
Yep.
But just look at even like rise of the feminine. I mean, that's not feminine.
Right.
And again, the feminine is like, she's the gatherer, the nurturer, right? I always look at the feminine and masculine, like she's the hub of the wheel. The masculine is the outside. It's a hunter-gatherer, right? Brings it into
protector.
Right. So this is where, like, even when you look at the planet, there's like been a huge demasculization of the masculine. And we need our men. We need more than ever, I believe, our titans and our warriors, right? And women need to be more in their feminine. And I think the rest is just a cry for love or an extension of love right now when we look at all these identities. Like my kids said, well, there's like 90 different identities. Well, I mean, again, that's attention. It's again, and by the way, negative attention is attention. And we were talking about this beforehand. I think there is a lot of mental health and addiction. I also want to be very clear with everybody that I think all of us deal with mental health and certain patterns and trauma. Right. And it's also like the way I look at it is like this separation. Like look at disease. That's why you never say the word disease together. Disease. It's lack of my inherent nature, which inherently I am ease. I am spirit. So as soon as we separate people, that's the disease, right? We've got to get back to who we inherently are, which is, that's why, I mean, we are spirit, and we need to harmonize ourselves with those laws, remember who we are. And that was really challenging for me too, because I grew up in a household where my father didn't show up and my mom would, not say such nice things. And she also attracted a lot of very abusive men in her life. So I grew up being an over masculine woman, meaning, right? Like, and that was unhealthy for me. And I think we see a lot of that in society too, where women are like climbing the corporate ladder, having babies, they're doing everything. We don't even need the man anymore. Well, we need our men, and we need our men more now than ever. But I think that's where our men need to step into that place, and women need to come into their strong feminine, and men are in their strong masculine. And this is where we're going to balance. But we're just seeing the breakdown and which is again, the opportunity is just like disease. Well, I mean, I've experienced disease. It's an opportunity to remember who I am.
It's beautiful in that context.
Yeah, it is.
It's an opportunity to remember. It's an opportunity to transmute a catalyst, right?
Exactly.
I want to ask you about some of the other practices that you do, because you also have the card practice that you have people do as well. Like where you write down.
Oh, yeah, your goal.
Your goal.
Yeah. Well, that was Bob. Of course, I'd learned about goals. I mean, studying with Robin Sharma and Tony Robbins, but that was Bob. Bob said, get your goal on a piece of paper. And, a card. So we create these cards. And by the way, Bob could pull out 3. He'd whip them out from all over, right? Because what does this do? Well, where focus goes, energy flows. Most people are focused on what they don't want. So when you get your goal, personally and professionally, what you really desire more than anything else on a card or on a piece of paper, and that's your focus every day. And even when clients come in to work with me, I get them to write, remember writing the formula, writing causes thinking, thinking causes. So I get them to write that out in the morning and at night as well. Because that's where you get more detail, and we think in pictures. So you just add you get clear, you connect it to your heart. And then you carry it. And like Bob would say, once, even touch that goal card. Like I have one in my kitchen, I have one in my vehicle, because that is my shooting point. Like that's right. And even when you touch it, like Bob would always say, well, it sends a light energy that goes from your hand all the way up to your heart. By the way, that's your heart meridian. And it lands right here. Right. So, it's just something that I have my clients do. I love it because I think that's the thing. Even when you look at like the majority of people, they are focused on what they don't want. They're not clear on their goals. They don't have them written down. And it's just a really great practice. And I know, and it took me a while. I had to like shift that paradigm, I think, to even like write my goal out and get in that habit and even carrying my goal card, because that's the paradigm. The paradigm does not want to change. That's why it's so hard and then messy in the middle. Right? So you got to create those healthier habits.
Right.
It's just like going to the gym and working out or just going for a daily walk. Initially, the paradigm doesn't want to change. That's why it's so hard. And it seems like right when you decide to go to the gym, maybe you have that other friend who's a little heavy, calls you and says, hey, let's meet at like the donut shop. The paradigm is so sneaky, and it will definitely show up in others as well. Just want you to know that. So when this is our shooting point, and when we have it written down, that's our law. When you study laws, and even I'm deep into like feng shui. I mean, the last book that I co-authored was with Marie Diamond from The Secret, and she does all the vision boards and the feng shui work. And that's why we've got to write this down in black or blue ink, because this is my agreement. Right. I'm only in agreement with this. This is what I am going to focus on every day.
That's so cool, because that's what you're referring to there is that's like what the true law, like common law, that's a common law principle.
You got to write it down. It's your agreement. It's your contract. And we all have contracts and agreements. Just most of those are not, it's all for us in the end. Yeah. But ultimately, what do you want? Yeah. More than anything else. I believe everybody here has a purpose. Yeah. That you are a snowflake. You are unique. There's something that makes you who you are, and there's something that makes me who I am. And I'm no better and no less than you. And if we started looking at every human being that way, including probably those really enlightened beings that have decided to be stuck on the street, you never know, right? Everybody has a purpose. Everybody is important. And so this is that co-creation. So, yeah. Again, you trained under Bob Proctor. So one of the last things I want to touch on is the 6 spiritual gifts, or the 6 higher faculties that you learned from him. So could you share those too? Yeah. So the 6 higher mental faculties, or we call them spiritual gifts. They're your God-given gifts. And most people, they're weak. So we have to develop them. And it's too bad this isn't taught in school, because it could be, and it should be, because this is where we want to teach our children to think for themselves. This is a sovereign being. Most people are operating out of their lower mental faculties, and those lower mental faculties are there really to protect us. You think of like, I can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. It's why you don't walk in front of a bus. You walk in front of the bus, smack, right? When we are operating out of the lower mental faculties, there's a lot of reactive energy. So I can tell right away if somebody's I used to operate out of my lower mental faculties all the time. It was watch my big fat Greek wedding. It was like my family life. And I still have to be mindful of that, because it's an old habit, right? And so, that's a great barometer, is like, okay, and by the way, because the more you study yourself, the paradigm gets smarter. So it'd be like, oh, well, I'm not freaking out and reacting and slapping cupboards. Now I'm imploding. Oh, nobody knows I'm angry. Well, it's still the same. Right. Right. So when we operate at the lower mental faculties, it makes us no different than a pig or a horse, which is quite interesting, because we're kind of confused right now on that, which is interesting. But this is what separates us from our animal friends. And let's just say it the way it is. We are not cats and dogs. Right. We are not. We are spiritual beings having this human experience, and this is what separates us from our animal friends. We have the ability to think. Right. The ability to dream. Ability to pretend that we're cats and dogs. Right, totally. We have the ability to dream. So our higher mental faculties are our imagination. Right. We have an incredible imagination. It's just most people's imagination is weak. Or it's focused on what they don't want. So they keep attracting more of what they don't want. And Bob would always say that most people actually shut off their imagination, and usually about grade 1 in school. Sit up straight, pay attention. stop dreaming. That's why I loved Waldorf education. Hey, start dreaming. Let's go out and play in the forest and let's plant gardens.
The exact opposite of that, right?
Which is exactly the opposite. So
it's literally worked out of you in public school systems and a lot of private ones nowadays.
Right. And when you understand the whole school system, it was created during the industrial age to make good little factory workers. Well, okay, it's time to shift that paradigm.
Right.
Just like other paradigms, we got to shift.
Yeah.
But we have an incredible imagination. Right. I mean, everybody is a genius. I mean, you have this, but again, you just got to strengthen it. So we have imagination, we have will, that's the discipline again, right? And that's the focus. And look at distractions. That's where the will is weak, that's like scrolling on Facebook, right? That's like the hamster on the wheel. Like, again, we've got to strengthen that. We've got reason, which is our ability to think. We got perception. I love what Dr. Wayne Dyer would say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
I love Wayne
So
Dyer.
we've got to strengthen our perception. We have memory. You have an incredible memory. It's just most people's is weak. And even looking back at memory, I had this bad habit of saying, oh, I have a weak memory. I can't remember a person's name or their phone number or whatever. So I had actually reinforced I had a bad memory. And I remember Bob saying, you have an incredible memory. Stop saying you have a bad memory. You just have to strengthen it. And memory is strengthened through ridiculous association. Mm-hmm. I mean, I got I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of connections of clients and people. And I remember every single one of their names. I now know their kids. Because again, once you understand these are your spiritual gifts, you want to strengthen them every day. And intuition. And we have an incredible intuition. Bob would always say prayer is when you talk to God. Intuition is when God talks to you. So these are our higher mental faculties. Now, when we strengthen them, and even Napoleon Hill through Think and Grow Rich, he talks a lot about the higher mental faculties. That's where you're going to reach success, is when these higher mental faculties are strong. By the way, this is what separates failures from those that are leading. Failures tend to be in the lower mental faculties, reactivity, focused on the problem, where successful human beings, they're strengthening their higher mental faculties. There's a calm energy. This was, during the rollout of the pandemic, whatever you want to call it. I remember Bob, and it was just absolutely incredible. And I remember him, with everyone freaking out and they're all going to Bob. Bob's like, we got to start a good news channel. And I was like, that is a leader. He wasn't freaking out. And then he reminded people, because of course it was because he had built a studio, which was like a live TV studio within his back of his home. Mm-hmm. Put a lot of money into the studio. And so people were jumping on live, of course, to his good news channel. And he just reminded people, when things are really bad, there's a lot of good coming. What are you focused on? Are you focused on the bad or are you focused on the good? That's the law of polarity.
Right.
Right. And so he was just such an example of a real leader because he was calm. He was already focused on the solution. And that is a sign of someone who has so developed their higher mental faculties. Mm. They know, they can think, they understand the law. That's where he was, his faith. He is educated, understanding around the law and the mind. And so that's what he was doing, was instead of, because what was going on at that time? So much fear mongering, so much subliminal, subconscious through news, isolation. And then Bob starts up the Good News channel. Yeah. And he encouraged people to, there's no better time to lead than right now. Study yourself and strengthen these higher mental faculties, right?
Does he share how to cultivate and develop those higher mental faculties?
Yeah, so that's what we do. And so when, of course, you work with a consultant like myself, and that's actually lesson 5, and it's called Thinking into Results. So Thinking into Results, the program.
Lesson 5 of your program that you have,
yeah,
right?
Which is called Thinking into Results, which is not, I don't even like to refer to it as a program because it's a way of living. It's a way of life, just like yoga.
Especially because program can be in a negative context a lot of times nowadays.
So you could say, well, I'm training to be a yoga teacher. Well, okay, but this is going to be a lifelong practice. Right? It's just like eating healthy. It's a lifelong practice. Mm-hmm. So we teach that in lesson 5, which is called Thinking into Results, and you can think, right? It's just that maybe, and I've heard you, on many of the other podcasts talking about inductive and deductive thinking. Like if you're not learning how to think for yourself, if you're not strengthening your higher mental faculties, someone's going to do the thinking for you. Yeah. And that's where, and we've all experienced that too. Like even if you look at that from an energy perspective, if I walk in here and I'm in a great mood and I'm feeling great and I'm grateful and you're going to feel great, hopefully. Right. But let's say I walk in and your faculties are weak and I'm in a negative mindset, when all of a sudden you're thinking negative, right? So goes back to your experiment with the eggs and everything. It's like, this is where that's that Pygmalion effect, is if I so develop myself, which should be my number one focus, not about changing anyone, even like with your kids. Bob would always say, stop telling your kids what to do, right? You just be a leader. Like, you get you right and the world is going to follow your lead.
Amen.
Right? So, I mean, yeah, let's just do our own internal work. I mean, it's an inside job. And I think this is the way that most people on this planet are operating, is they're so focused on what's going on outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Buddha said it, right? You point your finger, 3 pointing back.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the work is.
Right.
And well, you woke up today, another day of living, loving, and serving, and it's just doing the work. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the recontextualization there too of, people might look at focusing on self as selfish, as someone who doesn't care about other people. But ultimately, the only way you can truly help other people is by helping yourself first. It's 100%. Like the example that everyone uses of, being on an airplane. They invite you to put your mask on first before helping others. You have to breathe life into you first. You have to make yourself coherent. Otherwise, if you try to do work with others or serve others first before making yourself coherent, you're actually doing them a disservice, because you're not coming from a coherent place. You might be, helping to bring their field down, so to speak. So you have to do the work to bring yourself into coherence before you can help others. I think it's the most important work there is to do. As a last question, for those people who want to work with you or take any of your what word did you use instead of programs? Any of your courses? Just work with you.
New way of living from the inside out, and really getting results that stick.
Awesome. And they can do that via the links in the show notes?
So what I'm offering is, you can, and I sent, I think, Kimberly the links to put, you can reach out and, have a 20-minute call with myself or my team. I've got team members all over Germany, everywhere, that are really leading in this way of living and being experts in this material, and that are doing the good work every day, because it never ends. By the way, if someone tells you they're enlightened, they found the way, probably you should run the other direction. Right. And then what I do as well, Alec, is every so often I've been offering an opportunity, because I also teach sales. And most people don't understand sales. And I say, everybody's a salesperson. Everybody's selling a service, a product, or an idea. Even you're doing that through this podcast, right? And when you understand sales, it's not something you do to someone, you do it for them. But you got to understand sales. And I think all of us have had bad experiences with slimy salespeople, or people that are not in integrity with sales. I say the best salespeople are your children, by the way, because when they really want something, they're going to get it. But in order for people to want to work with you, they usually need to have some really positive exposures to you. The theory is that they need to have 5 to 15 positive experiences. That's even like your podcast, just continually like putting out this good. They're going to have those, and we call them touches. So what I decided to do is to offer 2 weeks of mentorship with me for free. And you can come into lesson 1, which is where we start getting clear around what is it you really want. And you can have that experience with myself and the team. So before you make the investment in your time, energy, and money, and of course, we should be doing that all the time. That's growth mindset, that you can come into me. So I also sent Kimberly, some information around that if they want to come in. It's just something I actually just started doing. I've only done it 3 times, but I recognize that, they got to strengthen their faith. They got to see that I'm going to deliver. Because I think right now there's so much out there. Like, we are on information overload, but we're lacking wisdom. So, I believe so much in what I do. When I started studying with Bob, I was like, this was the missing piece. I loved everything I did with Tony, and it was great. I think there was a lot of it helped me survive. But if you want to thrive,
helped you to get discipline.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. But if you want to thrive, I can show you a way. But you're going to have to study your mind. You're going to have to start to understand and harmonize these laws with the laws of your being. And it's just amazing. So this is the other thing I'm offering if anyone wants to join myself and my team.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Tara. This was amazing.
Thank you for having me.